Hi everyone and welcome to In Deep Geek Live. This is an AMA, an Ask Me Anything About the Winds of Winter. For the last, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 months, I've been doing character-focused live streams looking at specific POV characters in the Winds of Winter. And today what we're doing is just wrapping all of that up. I've got a new series of live streams that's going to be starting as of next week, something that my patrons have been voting on. We're going to be looking at some of the most interesting and intriguing families, houses in the whole world of the Winds of Winter. But today we're going to wrap up any questions you have about the Winds of Winter. So as always, I'm going to be taking questions from my patrons. I took a whole load of questions from them before we went live, and I will be framing it around those. This is going to be dotting around, just advance warning. We're going to be moving around from lots of different places in the Winds of Winter. And so just basically wherever you want to go. I will start with a super chat I had from Maura Lee before we went on air, which was saying, just my usual show of love, support and appreciation for all the fabulous content and amazing stories on both channels. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to the wonderful Wizard of Oz on the Well-Told Tale. For those who don't know, I have a second channel where I do audio narration of what I consider to be the finest science fiction and fantasy stories ever written. And just this week, I finished doing the wonderful Wizard of Oz, the original story behind the classic movie. So if you've ever wondered what the story was behind that movie, then please do go and check out my second channel, The Well-Told Tale. But Maura also asked a question about the prologue of the Winds of Winter, saying, what do you think the prologue will be for the Winds of Winter? Or what or who do you think you would like to read about? What information would be interesting to find out about? So the prologue is an interesting one for the Winds of Winter because George R. R. Martin has given us a hint. He's basically said that we are going to see Jane Westerling, who is Robb Stark's widow. Now, that doesn't mean that she's the POV character, just as a sort of a general rule so far. George R. R. Martin has said he likes to create rules and then break them, but as a general rule so far, on all of his prologues, the character dies. Maybe not in that prologue itself, but at some point during that story. So it may or may not be from her perspective, but we will see her. Now, what does this mean? This is part of the very complicated set of stories that are going on within the Riverlands. Last we saw of her, she's being sent west from the Riverlands to the Westlands. The idea is that she is now a prisoner of the Lannisters, and she is heading off presumably in a convoy from sort of River Run-ish area down towards Casterly Rock. So that is where we're going to last see her, and probably what's going to happen is someone's going to ambush that caravan that she's based in. Now, there are lots of different candidates here. Lady Stoneheart with the Brotherhood Without Banners, perhaps Arya's super pack of wolves, Nymeria, who is operating independently from Arya, but is linked with her, so we may see it through Arya's perspective. Whichever way it goes, I suspect that the first chapter of the Winds of Winter is going to be an attack on Jane Westerling's caravan heading west, and she is going to be released in some way. So what does that mean? I don't think that she's pregnant with Robb's child. I don't think that's what's going on here. But this is part of the Riverlands plot, which will carry on through most of the Winds of Winter, which is focused around the idea that, yes, technically the Lannisters are in control, but really, no. It's Stark sympathizers. It's the Brotherhood without banners. It's Arya's or Nymeria's super wolf pack. And it is the characters who come through there during this plotline, which will include Jaime, who is no longer, for this book at least, I suspect, a Stark sympathizer. Arya, who's probably going to come there from Braavos, coming back through towards Westeros, but passing through. The Riverlands are no longer going to be a Lannister stronghold. They will be a Stark sympathizer stronghold, and this is going to be setting the frame for that in book 1. Googly Woogly, thank you so much for the super chat. Always laugh at your name, thank you. Saying, hello friend, will it ever be finished? Sounds like a huge book. Will it be split in 2? Thanks. I think this is going to be a fun discussion. Yeah, I've got a few other questions on that. Eric Forg says, do you think there is any way to actually complete the series in 2 more books? The storyline seems to demand at least 3 more books. I would prefer George R. R. Martin to release many shorter books rather than the monstrously large editions. So I am going to do a video on this. I've gone down one of those internet wormholes. You know the feeling. I've been trying to figure out how big the Winds of Winter is going to be. And this takes, I think, a reasonable understanding of what each of the different plot lines are, taking us towards an endpoint. I've taken as my endpoint. You may disagree, but I think that the endpoint of this will be something around Daenerys finally reaching Westeros and the others finally breaching the wall. That, for me, seems like a reasonable endpoint for this and a start point for the final book. So if we tried to work out how much story we need to get through in order to get to that point, it is a lot. I haven't finished that video, so I'm not going to spoil it here. I normally spoil my own videos ahead of time, but I haven't yet figured out how many chapters. But what I can say is that it is definitely going to be bigger than any other book in this series so far. Now, what does that mean in terms of how many physical books are we going to see? Well, I think that given that 2 of the books we've had so far have had to be split into 2 simply because they've got too many pages. There is a limit on how many pages you can have in one book before you have to split it into 2. It has to be split into at least 2 books, possibly 3. Now, George R. R. Martin may keep this high level, this is book 6 idea, but realistically this is going to be at least 2 or 3 books, and I think they will all be released at the same time. I think that he sees this as 1 book in 2 or possibly 3 parts. So yeah, will it be released into at least that is what I'm going to say. If I've looked at this a lot, which is why I'm slightly pausing for words. But if you take all of the plot lines that we've got, the Winds of Winter has to bring everything back in together. The last book, A Dream of Spring, has to have everybody at the right point in order for that end story to play out. Now, we've got some massive storylines. We've got the whole Daenerys storyline over in far Essos, Slavers Bay, going up to Vace Dothrak and all the rest of it. And we've got a lot of POV characters there. We've got Daenerys herself. We've got Tyrion. Tyrion always has plenty of chapters. He is George R. R. Martin's favorite character. He's my favorite character. He will get lots of chapters. We've got Barristan there. We've got Victarion there. We've got a lot of characters all focused around that one area and a lot of plot to get through before they get back. That's one huge plot line in and of itself. The North is going to be a huge plot line as well. We've got Jon, who's currently dead, and we've got to deal with that whole issue, get him back alive again, get him back into Castle Black and then over to Winterfell. We've got the whole Great Northern Conspiracy to be dealing with. That is a huge plot line. We've got Theon, we've got Asha, who are all up there as well. We've got the various Stark siblings that need to come back to Winterfell. We've got Arya. There's no other POV characters who can tell us what's going on with Arya. So we've got to see her plotline. We've got to see Sansa's plotline. We've got to see Rickon's plotline, which is going to be told through Davos. They've all got to come back in again. And that is not even talking about what is probably the biggest plotline of all, which is what's going on in King's Landing in the south. Aegon's invasion, Cersei, how's she going to deal with the Tyrells? Are we going to have this whole explosion with the Great Sept? What's going to be the aftermath of that? What's happening with the Great Dornish plots going on? What about Euron? There are so many different aspects to this. This is going to be a massive book. George R. R. Martin admits it's going to be huge. From his perspective, huge is huge. This is going to be a massive book. 2, possibly even 3 books. Now, in terms of timing, this is a slight digression. It's not going to be this year, definitely. Probably not next year. He is writing. I am personally not wanting to rush him. I would rather an excellent book in 3 years' time than something that he's quickly trotted out now. It is going to be massive. This is the largest extent of the story before he brings it all back in, before he can tell people's stories from specific POVs. And this is I suspect something he's very aware of is that there are a lot of storylines that he's only got one POV character that can tell. Sansa, Arya, Rickon, Doran down in Dawn, Sam down in Old Town. There's a lot of places where there's only one POV character left. In Castle Black, the only POV character left is Melisandre, and so on. So we've got a lot of places where there's only one POV character. When he brings it back and he can focus it back in on a few key places where there are a lot of POV characters, he can choose which character is the best character to show something from. For now, he has to make it large so that he can show all of the different storylines, and they all need different point of view characters. So that's a slightly long-winded response to Googly Woogly there, but I think it's quite an important one in terms of understanding the scale of what we've got going on here with the Winds of Winter. This is going to be massive. Do not be surprised if it is 3 books. I'm sure I had a couple of other super chats while I was talking through that. Yeah, so I had one from Rudy H. Thank you so much. I didn't see a question there, Rudy. I'm sure. Oh, yeah. So question just below that saying, do you think the Riverlands are not really pro-North and really pro-Targ? If so, will they side with Aegon or Dany? Love your videos and the way you break down the story. Thank you so much. So the Riverlands are always, they're the center, they're the heartbeat of this story. Everything is going to come back to revolve around the Riverlands. On the show, it was about Winterfell and King's Landing. In the books, the heart of this is that few square miles around Harrenhal, the Isle of Faces, the Inn at the Crossroads. That is the heart of this story. As far as George R. R. Martin is concerned, that is where all of the main decisions are going to be revolving around. So in terms of whether they're pro-North or pro-Targ, it's quite mixed. And this is deliberate, I think, on George R. R. Martin's part, is that he's not putting the heart of his story as being completely on behalf of one person or on behalf of another person. House Blackwood, for example, we'll come on to them in a little bit more detail later. I've got a question from one of my patrons on that. They are very First Men. They are very instinctively pro-Stark. Some other families, for example, you get the phrase, they will be naturally, instinctively behind whoever is going to get them the most money, which at the moment seems to be House Lannister. So that is where they're going to be going. The Riverlands is deliberately complicated. That is what George R. R. Martin has set up. And where they're going will reflect where the story as a whole is going. And fundamentally, I suspect the end of it, the most powerful thing that we're going to be seeing is the Isle of Faces. So that is where it's going to go. In terms of Riverrun, that's the technical capital of the Riverlands that will move to and fro. It was pro-Stark. It's now pro-Lannister. I suspect it will move back to pro-Stark before this story has ended. But we shouldn't underestimate the fact that there are two layers to this. There's the political level and then there's the magical level. The political level will be going with whoever's in control, and the Lannisters were and the Starks will be. The magical level is moving ever more towards the Children of the Forest. So that's my general take on what's going on in the Riverlands. Flinted Steel, thank you so much. I didn't see a question attached to that one either. I'll have a quick flick through, see if I can see that. Michael Matthews, thank you, saying, hey mate, watch most of your videos. I think a great person to have a podcast with would be Preston Jacobs. Yeah, I'm a Preston Jacobs fan. I've not actually, to be honest, I've not watched any of his videos for a couple of years, and when I did watch them, I probably disagreed with a reasonable amount of what he said. But Preston Jacobs, if you've never come across him, is one of the original YouTube theorists on A Song of Ice and Fire. And a lot of what he's done is incredibly insightful. So yeah, I will at some point. I've not spoken to Preston ever. I've got a lot of respect for what he does. So yeah, I will have a look out for seeing whether there are any opportunities to work with him in the future. Thank you for the recommendation. Question from Randy Bobandi. Just wanted to show some love for all the great videos you make. I also agree that Preston Jacobs would be a great guest. I will definitely check him out. Thank you so much. And Ian Thomas, how will the Reach and the Tyrells fit into all of this? So the Tyrells are at the moment half in power in King's Landing. Now we talk about the Lannisters as being in power, but if you read between the lines about what's happening in King's Landing towards the end of A Dance with Dragons, actually the Lannisters haven't got as many soldiers there as the Tyrells do. And Marjorie is gaining the support of the small folk, and Kevin Lannister is starting to realize this. Kevin Lannister is I have a lot of sympathy for him because he's competent and he's clever and he realizes what's going on, and he's not as ruthless as Tywin Lannister, and he is killed in the last chapter, the epilogue of A Dance with Dragons, and Varys, who does the killing, basically gives the reason, sorry, but you were good at your job. You were too good at your job and I had to get rid of you. Someone like Cersei, I can control, I can manipulate. No, you're just competent. So Kevin Lannister was doing a reasonably good job. But the Tyrells they got half of the people on the small council, and they were starting to win the wider battle for the sympathy of the people of King's Landing. So that's what's going on. Moving slightly further forward, what Varys has done is he has framed the Tyrells for the murder of Kevin Lannister. Is Cersei going to fall into this trap? Almost certainly. Now, what will she do with that? She will try and kill as many Tyrells as she can. It might be the same thing with the blowing up the Great Sept of Baelor. That might be the way that she goes. She could kill two birds with one stone, get rid of the High Sparrow and all the rest of it. That seems to make sense as the kind of thing that she would do. So I think that is likely that is what is going to happen at some point in the first half of the Winds of Winter, is that Cersei will blow up lots of Tyrells. Now, Mace Tyrell will survive. He is taking his army out of King's Landing and he's heading down to Storm's End. We know this as a fact. So that's what's happening there. The question then is, what do the Tyrells do? What does the Queen of Thorns do, or Mace Tyrell do, once effectively Cersei Lannister has declared war on them? They declare for whoever is against Cersei Lannister. And the person who is against Cersei Lannister at that point of time will be Aegon. So I expect the Tyrells, and on behalf of the Tyrells, the Reach, to suddenly switch support and go to support Aegon VI, as he will claim to be. So that is where I see them fitting into this plot. It means that Cersei is not going to be long in King's Landing. She will make her claim for the throne effectively, and then she will get pushed out by Varys working behind the scenes, by the Tyrells turning on her, and by Aegon VI moving into towards King's Landing and basically attacking it with all of the forces he has at his disposal, which will be not just the Golden Company, but probably also by that point the Dornish army as well. Morally, thank you so much for the super sticker saying you are amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Just flicking through to make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I think I'm roughly caught up. I had one more from Reflective Rambling. Hi there, saying for Oliver Hill. I love it when people do this, by the way. Just picking up on other people's questions. The chat moves through very quickly and I can't pick up everyone's questions as I'm going through. So when somebody does a super chat picking up someone else's question, I hugely appreciate it. So for Oliver Hill, do we think Barristan will join Aegon? Seems likely that if he makes it to Westeros, his loyalties will definitely be torn. A treason for love, ? So So Barristan is an interesting character. He's one of the characters that George R. R. Martin, if we think back 3-4 years ago, whatever, he was very clear in saying he is still alive in the books after he was killed on the show, which seems to imply he's got some plot yet to go. He does definitely have some plot still to do down in Slaver's Base, down in Meereen. He was, and just getting into writing technical issues here, George R. R. Martin introduces POV characters when he realizes that he needs to show what happens in an area and the main POV character is going away. A really good example of this is at the Wall. Jon is about to be killed. He was the only POV character left at the Wall. Sam's gone away. So he introduces Melisandre as a POV character in the last, in A Dance with Dragons, so that when Jon is dead, we can still see what's happening at the Wall, because he is very clear he wants POV characters to show us what's happening in different places. Barristan was introduced as a POV character because George R. R. Martin knew that at some point Daenerys would be going away, and he wanted to show what was happening in Meereen while she was gone away. That is the whole point about him being a POV character. He does drop some bits of information about what happened back in Robert's Rebellion and all the rest of it, but every time, and this is something that I am immensely frustrated with George R. R. Martin in a good way about, is that every time he starts to say something interesting, someone interrupts or Daenerys gets bored or something like that. So he's about to say something and it doesn't really come out. The point of him being a POV character is that he is there showing us what is happening in Meereen while Daenerys has gone away. So what does this mean for him as a character going forward? Well, from that perspective, his role is fulfilled when Daenerys comes back, which she will, but not yet. So she is going to come. She's got some plotline up at Vaes Dothrak with all the Dothraki, which I think we can all guess at. Once she dealt with that, she will come back down to Meereen. So that's the point at which Barristan is not needed as much, because we will have both Daenerys' perspective and also by that point Tyrion, who's there at Meereen as well. So will he join Fagon? Possibly, if he gets there. So as I said, I think that the main point of his character will have gone by that point. He may carry on past the point at which he died on the show. But I put it at about 50-50. I think we've so far had this kind of, within Meereen, this rebellion from the people, from the Sons of the Harpy, and it's just been a little bit, maybe they've killed a few people off screen. We haven't felt it yet. If we are going to feel it, Barristan dying is probably the way we're going to feel it, to be honest. So I think there's a chance that he will die in something similar to what happened on the show. If he doesn't, yes, he will be slightly conflicted when he gets back to, or when he starts to understand that there is this character, Fagon, this character Aegon, who is claiming to be Aegon VI, because that would be the heir ahead of Daenerys of the Targaryen throne, and he is a stickler for duty, is Barristan Selmy. So could he betray her? Possibly. I think, as I say, I think it's 50-50 he's going to die in Meereen anyway. If he survives, then he's going to be a sort of a supporting character rather than, we're not going to see most of what's going on from his perspective after that. He may jump ship, but only if he gets convinced that this actually is who Fagon actually is who he claims he is. And the only kind of foreshadowing that I sort of see there is this idea that Fagon, I suspect, is going to try to recreate in some way the classic Kingsguard that was there. We're going to get Darkstar arriving, who is going to, almost certainly, he's going to be claiming the Sword Dawn, and he's going to be claiming to be the sort of the heir, so to speak, of Arthur Dayne. And if he could get Barristan Selmy back as well as being a member of his Kingsguard, just to give him that extra authority, then I think he would go for it. But possibly is as far as I'm going to go. I don't think this is the main plot point. It's about 50-50 whether he even gets out of Slavers Bay. Question from Chrissy of Old Stones, thank you so much, saying Rudy and Flint's questions were posted in the chat. I saw Rudy's question. Flint's, I'm not so sure I did see. Let me have a quick flick through, see if I can see it. Okay, no, I can't see it. I'm sorry about that. But I did see Voice of Geekdom. Hi there, good to see you. I'm going to send you a message. Look out for that. But I had a question from, let's flick through here, from Bear Island Josh. Oh, actually, it's not a question, it is just a chat. Thank you so much, Bear Island Josh. I hugely appreciate that. And then a question from... sorry guys, I know this is taking a little while. Susan Dunkel saying Bear Island Josh, oh, this is picking up on Bear Island Josh, wants to know if you think the Hound will stay on the Quiet Isle, or is there more. So if you want more about the Hound, I did a whole live stream on the Hound in the Winds of Winter, so either last week or I think probably 2 weeks ago. So if you're interested in him, go check that out. I think the short answer is no. He is definitely there. He is the gravedigger. I think it is very likely that some people, possibly remnants of the Bloody Mamas, will go and attack the Quiet Isle. And I think that he will go out seeking vengeance. I think he will be a changed person, but I think that he will end up going out, and I think he probably will link up with some version of the Brotherhood without banners, in the same way that has happened on the show. If you're interested in slightly more detail than that, as I say, do go check back. I think it was 2 weeks ago on a live stream when I was talking about the Hound. He is the classic broken man. He died effectively. He was buried effectively, and the Gravedigger is a new character. So do not be surprised if we see the Gravedigger being his new nom de plume. This is something George R. R. Martin does a huge amount, is when characters have new, or people within his story have new characters to them, they get new nom de plumes. So the Hound is gone. The Hound is whoever has got the Hound helmet. Sandor Clegane will not have the Hound helmet. He will be the Gravedigger, and that is his new nom de plume and his new character going forward. The Purple Lord Leo Anansi, thank you so much, saying, I believe that the Night's King was a Blackwood, not a Stark, and that is why they were driven from the north. No one says the name, it was banned. Okay, good question. So the Night's King in the books, as opposed to the Night King in the show, is a mythological, legendary creature, legendary person who was a Lord Commander, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Now, he saw a woman north of the wall who sounds like an other. He fell in love with her, and bad things ensued. Basically, there were sacrifices to the others, and eventually the Starks and the King Beyond the Wall united and took him down. Now, Old Nan kind of hints maybe he was a Stark, which seems possible. When you're saying that maybe this person was a Blackwood, not a Stark, and that is why they were driven from the north, it's possible. We simply do not have all of the evidence to say one way or the other. The Blackwoods are south of the Neck. The Blackwoods were part of the First Men. The Starks, we should clarify, their history is that although we think of them as being the undisputed rulers of the North, that's not how they started. They got that way by defeating one petty king after another petty king, pushing them out, intermarrying, killing. This took them millennia before they had control of all of the North. The Blackwoods were one of the first men, possibly even, according to legend, possibly even the kings of the first men. And when the Starks claimed control of the North, they claimed control of large parts of the Riverlands, and this is where they were. So, were they pushed from the North because the Night's King was one of their number? Possibly, but I don't think we have the evidence one way or the other to prove it. I like the idea, personally, I like the idea that the Night's King was a Stark, that the reason, or one of the reasons why the oldest parts of the Winterfell crypts are caved in, that we can't actually see them, is part of this idea that they shall never know the name of the Night's King, because the Night's King was one of those early Starks, and that has been collapsed and no one will ever see it. So that is my personal take. Maybe the Blackwoods were around, there's no doubt about that, but we don't have any specific evidence about what's going on further than that. Let's a question. I've got a few questions I need to catch up on. So, Catherine Furseth, thank you so much, saying, where will Jaime spend the Winds of Winter? His storyline is so different from the show. How about a Dan cameo at 500 watching? Well, I don't know how many people are watching at the moment. 527. Dan is actually, he's gone upstairs to bed. Sorry. This is quite late at night here. We're at 10 to 11. And I normally I send him up. Sorry, so no Dan cameo tonight. Where will Dan? For those who don't know, Dan is my dog, my greyhound. And for those who do not know greyhounds, they do two things: they sprint for about 20 minutes a day, and then the rest of the time they sleep. That's all they do. So he's gone to bed. Sorry. Where will Jaime spend the Winds of Winter? His storyline is different from the show. How about where will he spend the Winds of Winter? Most of it will be in the Riverlands. So where we left him was that he won a battle. I can say a battle is the wrong way of saying it. He won Riverrun for the Lannisters, and he won House Blackwood. The name of their house has escaped my mind. Sorry, mind blank. These things happen. Also for the Lannisters, and then as he headed over to Pennytree just to spend the night, then Brienne comes to him, and he heads off and follows her, and she is almost certainly taking him to see Lady Stoneheart. Now, immediately before that, if you've seen my video on Jaime's vision of his mother, this is one of the most underrated segments of the whole of the Winds of Winter in terms of character development for Jaime, because that makes him turn his back on his family. He immediately, after having this vision of his mother, who's basically saying, you're not who you think you are. You're not this great and shining knight. Just stop pretending. And after that, winter comes, snow starts falling. He thinks about what would his father do, and he thinks it doesn't matter what his father would do because his father's dead. He thinks about what would he do. Would he throw snowballs at Tyrion? Would he push snowballs down Cersei's back? And he says, it doesn't matter. That's not me now. Cersei sends him a message saying, come help me now, and he crumples it up and he burns it. He is turning his back on House Lannister. Where his story goes in the Winds of Winter is initially primarily to do with Lady Stoneheart and the Brotherhood Without Banners. That is what his story is. It is about moving away from House Lannister and moving towards an understanding of who he personally is. So that's where he is, and he will end it, I humbly predict, in heading north to help out in the battle against the others. So that's my personal prediction on where Jaime's going to end this. Eric Harker saying, what will Lady Stoneheart's reaction be to Jon's parentage? I don't think Lady Stoneheart will ever hear Jon's true parentage. Lady Stoneheart is driven primarily by this vengeance idea against the people who have hurt her and her family. And so when she understands that, yes, Rob may be lost, but Sansa lives, Arya lives, Rickon lives, Bran lives. Once she understands these things, that is the moment at which she gets her freedom to move on, to actually stop being her. But before that happens, she has to gain vengeance, particularly upon House Frey. So I don't think she's ever going to actually have that moment with Jon. Personally, I know many people think that she will, that it would work really well. Personally, I don't think that she's going to get that. I think that she will cease to be well before we get to that point where Jon starts to understand his own parentage. Flinted Steel, how exactly will Sansa outsmart Littlefinger? Good question. So Sansa needs to be back on her own ground, which is the north, and Littlefinger coming back up with her. There are people who know what Littlefinger did. One of those is the Hound. He was there when Littlefinger betrayed Ned Stark. One of those will be Bran, who is also heading back to Winterfell. Also, Sansa herself, she's not stupid. She has been burying stuff, but she has seen things. She knows he's not good news, fundamentally. And once she is in a place where she is safe, that's the point at which she can start working through these things. So I think that, how will she outsmart him? I think it's actually fundamentally Littlefinger will overstretch. He will try to put her as the Lady of Winterfell, and then suddenly a thing that he had no idea existed, this last will and testament of Robb Stark, who legitimizes Jon. Jon becomes the Lord of Winterfell, the King of the North. And suddenly Littlefinger is without power in a place where he doesn't have any particular strength, and lots of people who know what he did. And so it's going to be the sort of thematic opposite of what happened with Ned Stark. when he went down to King's Landing with Ned Stark. Ned Stark was all about truth and honesty and loving your family and all the rest of it. And he got into court intrigue, and court intrigue was what got him. Littlefinger is going to go up to Winterfell, and he's all about court intrigue, and then suddenly truth and honesty and family will be what gets him. It's going to be a mirror of what happened to Ned Stark, in my view. Parksy T saying, love your streams. Thank you. Fagon gets a lot of flack for possibly not being a Targaryen. Even if he's a Blackfire, is his blood that less pure than Jon Snow or Dany's? I like his claim to the throne. Okay, so I personally call him Fagon because I do not believe that he is Aegon Targaryen, the person that he is claiming to be, or the person that he's been told to claim to be. That does not mean that he does not have a claim to the throne. He does have a claim to the throne. Now, when you get to looking at sort of family trees and all the rest of it, the Blackfires, we have to accept, do have a claim to the throne. Now, it may not be right, but they were legitimized. So Daemon Blackfire was legitimized. That means that he did have a claim to the throne. He lost the Blackfire Rebellion. So the power resides with who won. They get to decide and to write history. So the Blackfires and their many different rebellions, they get sort of written off in history. But that doesn't mean that the Blackfires are not part of the Targaryen family. They are part of the Targaryen family. They're just a sort of an offshoot of it. So once the Targaryens are whittled down to just 2 or 3 people, as they are in this story, if you want to know why that happened, because they were a huge family, I did a video a couple of months ago called something like the secret history of Jon. I don't know what it was called. Have a look back. It was looking back at the family tree of the Targaryens, and the way that Bloodraven almost certainly single-handedly pruned that family tree to the one branch that he wanted in power. Now, what that means is actually the Blackfires have got a reasonable claim if you were taking the Targaryens as the true kings. Many people wouldn't take the Targaryens as the true kings. They would say Robert Baratheon won the throne, therefore his stated heir is the true king, Stannis. It's just a matter of perspective. But in terms of the question, even if he's a Blackfire, is his blood that less pure than Jon Snow or Dany's? It's not less pure as a Targaryen, but it, in terms of what Bloodraven has been trying to do in creating a bloodline that reflects the families, the magical families of Westeros, it's the Blackfires are not there. And if you don't know what I mean by reflecting the magical families of Westeros, that video that I was talking about, that it was called something like the magical bloodline of Azor Ahai, that I was talking about. It's the if you take the pure parentage, the pedigree, which was what genealogists tend to call it, the pedigree of the line that Daenerys and Jon come from, then you see that it is purely Valyrian, purely old Valyrian bloodlines all the way through, mother and father, mother and father, mother and father, with a few exceptions. And the exceptions are someone from House Arryn, who is someone from with the sort of, if you take the magical lineage of the Faith of the Seven, someone from House Martell. If you take the magical lineage from the Rhoynar, someone from House Dane, who clearly have their own magical lineage, and then someone from House Blackwood, who have the magical lineage of the First Men. So those things are concentrated in on Jon and Daenerys, and they have got the magical lineage that reflects all of the magic of Westeros. So that is where they are. The Blackfires do not have that as a sort of a magical lineage. So I'm not a one for putting someone's claims to the throne above someone else's. I think this is the whole point George R. R. Martin is trying to make, is that it really is a matter of perspective. But in terms of Blackfires, is his blood less pure than Jon Snow or Dany's? Well, in terms of being an heir to the throne, no. But in terms of what Bloodraven is trying to create, then yes. Sydney Rose, thank you for the super chat. Jedi Master Robert, thank you very much. Will Dany kill Fagon? I imagine killing him won't endear her to the Tyrells, Varys, or the Martells. Will they support her? So yes, I think that she will. I think that she will kill him, or at least her dragons will kill him. I think that we will end up with her being able to take the throne if she wishes it, but then turning her attention to the north, to the fight against the others. I think that is the story we're going to have, not just in the Winds of Winter, but moving on into A Dream of Spring. Will that endear her to the Tyrells, Varys, or the Martells? No. I think Varys will be killed. I think that the Tyrells will become increasingly sidelines. Let's not forget, with the Tyrells, yes, they are the Lords of the Reach, but they're not the most powerful family in the Reach by a long stretch. You get the Hightowers, who are richer, older, more powerful, more magical than the Tyrells, and you get a House Tarly, who have got in Randall Tarly the best general in the Reach. So, and more soldiers, actually, interestingly, at King's Landing. So, yes, it won't endear her to any of those people. The Martells, this is all about Doran Martell's plans and plots, and I think I'll come on to this. I've got some questions from my patrons, which I will get onto, but I think that when Doran Martell's plots and plans show that they're not working, then that is the point at which there is going to be insurrection in the State of Dawn. I had Linda Prasuta saying, no question, just really enjoying the live stream. Thank you, Linda. It's been a while since I've been able to participate. I'm blaming on Bloodraven. Thanks for all the if in doubt, blame everything on Bloodraven. Absolutely. And I think you sent that one twice, Linda. I do appreciate that. I don't know if that was a mistake, but thank you so much. The Stark in Winterfell, I agree with Alex. I want to meet Dan. Dan, okay, I will make sure Dan makes an appearance on a live stream at some point in the future. Let's flick through, see whether there's any more questions before I move on to my patrons' questions. There are some. Thank you so much, guys. Question from apologies if I've missed any. The chat is moving very quickly, but Kofi Amankwa. Apologies for mispronouncing your name. I'm sure I did. How will Patchface influence events in the Winds of Winter? And do you think he's a vessel of the drowned gods, similar to Beric and R'hllor? So Patchface, for those who are show-only people, he's a book character, and he is Well, he was brought across as a sort of a clown, effectively, from Essos, and he survived the shipwreck that killed Stefan Baratheon, Robert Baratheon's father. He was brought back for the Baratheon children, and now Shireen Baratheon likes him a lot, but he is not this wonderful person, humorous and all the rest of it that you would hope. He is someone who is clearly magical, clearly slightly weird, and he talks in rhyme, and a lot of his rhymes seem to be slightly prophetic. He was underwater, it would appear, for 5 days. It would appear he died. It would appear that he came back to life. Does this make him some kind of emissary of the drowned god? I don't know. I think Patchface is one of the most enigmatic characters, and I'll be honest, he's someone that I've not yet come to the bottom of. I will do a video on him at some point, but this much I'm reasonably certain on. George R. R. Martin has said we're never going to see the gods in the Winds of Winter or any part of Song of Ice and Fire. So whether Varys is a vessel of the drowned god actually matters less than whether or not people believe him, or whether or not Patchface himself believes it and does things. Does he talk prophetically? Almost certainly. He is quite magical, but his prophecies, I would say, are the most oblique prophecies out of every prophecy that we have in the entirety of A Song of Ice and Fire. If you compare them to what we get from The Ghost of High Heart, or Maggie the Frog, or Dany's visions in the House of the Undying, what Patchface says is so vague that it's, yes, we can look at it and see certain things, but I don't think that he's there as a clear prophetic protagonist in any way. He will be protective of Shireen, so I think if I were to pick one moment where it's important that he is there, it is the moment that Melisandre decides that she is going to sacrifice Shireen, and I think that Patchface will come to her aid in some way, and there is going to be a fight between, whether it's an actual physical fight, I suspect not, but some sort of magical fight between Patchface and Melisandre. And Melisandre has already said that he's dangerous. She sees him as a threat. So that is what is his main role. I would personally suggest is in trying to protect Shireen against Melisandre burning Shireen, and I think that he will be unsuccessful. So he's a fascinating character, and he is much misunderstood, but I do not personally think that he's actually long for this world. Geese Mulder's saying, currently rereading A Storm of Swords, which is split into volumes Steel and Snow and Blood and Gold. Is there a meaning to those titles? Will the Winds of Winter be split too? Keep up the great work. Well, thank you. So I think Steel and Snow and Blood and Gold is purely an attempt at showing the difference between Steel and Snow is a lot more about the North and what's going on there. And when you get Blood and Gold, Gold is very much a Lannister thing. Blood, Fire and Blood is very much a Targaryen thing. So it is just trying to break down the two different huge storylines that are going on there. In terms of the Winds of Winter, will it be split too? Yeah, I was talking about this earlier. Yes, almost certainly. It will definitely be at least 2 books and possibly even 3 books. it's going to be massive. It's going to be bigger than any of the books that we've had so far in this series. Yeah, he could turn it into more books, but I think that thematically or artistically, he sees this all as one book from the point at which he picks up to this end point where Daenerys and the others, fire and ice, both start attacking Westeros. That, I think, is the end point of the Winds of Winter. He sees this thematically as one story to get to that point, and I don't think he yet knows how long it's going to be. I honestly don't. I think that he's still writing and he's not got to the end yet, and it's at least 2 books, possibly 3. Crawford Brown 75, thank you so much, saying owe you this and more for the content. Thanks. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. The Dancing Rat, thank you, saying, do you think the power in King's Blood is from the importance people give the title, or is it magic because the power comes from Targaryen and therefore Baratheon dragon's blood? It's a bit of both, but I think that this is magic across the piece in A Song of Ice and Fire is about sacrifice. And this is not just George R. R. Martin inventing a magic system. This is something he has acknowledged is the case across fantasy literature. You cannot have magic, you cannot break the rules of physics without some cost. It's almost Newtonian if you were to take it to a magical level. You cannot have a thing that you want without sacrificing a thing that you do not want in some way. So if you're to create magic, you have to have sacrifice. The Targaryens clearly understood that with the fire and blood idea, but it happens across the piece in every kind of magic you see, with the one exception that I will always come back to, which was Beric's initial resurrection. That's the one thing that always blows my mind. Somebody somewhere is going to explain it to me at some point, but that is the exception. Across the piece, generally speaking, magic always requires a sacrifice. So powering King's Blood is about the magnitude of the sacrifice in the perspective or the perspective of the person who's doing it. Yes, you could kill somebody who means nothing to you. Is that a sacrifice? Not really. If you sacrifice a king, that would be huge. If you sacrifice someone with the king's blood, that is perhaps not quite as big, but still quite magnificent. So, and then it goes, the smaller the sacrifice, the smaller the amount of magic you can do. When you go to huge magic, when you think about the Children of the Others, the Hammer of the Waters, this is legendary stuff, but apparently there are hundreds of deaths, hundreds of people sacrificed in order to do that huge magic. So when we see magic, there is always a cost, and that cost comes from, more often than not, from blood. So Power of King's Blood is about the perception of what the sacrifice is, rather than it just being a specific Targaryen-y thing. Alejandra Lopez, thank you so much, saying, hey Robert, how similar do you think Dany's storyline with the Dothraki will be in comparison to the show? Will she control them against the slavers? Yeah, I think at a high level it will be similar. We've had, from the House of the Undying, we had a vision of what looked like the women, the Doshkalin, coming out from the womb of the world to that lake and then bowing down, which seems to imply that, yes, she probably will burn down the Khals. She probably will take control of them. It probably won't be exactly the same. I think for me, the big difference will be this isn't going to be, we're not going to have Jorah and Dario going up there trying to save her and all the rest of it. That's not going to happen. This is going to be just her. She's going to do what she does. She's going to cause a fire. She's going to burn down the Khals, and she's going to emerge out from it, and she will claim to have killed the Khals. Not just claim it. she actually did do it. She will have killed the Carls, and therefore she will be in charge of all of the different Khalasars that are there, and that's what's going to happen. The slight technical difference could be that rather than trying to bring them down to Slavers Bay, she may return down to Slavers Bay on Drogon, and she may send them west, and she may meet them over in somewhere like Pentos, so she could send them over there and then pick them up later and bring them over to Westeros. So that's the sort of the slight technical difference that I could see there. But broadly speaking, yes, it's going to be the same, I think. And a question from Jake Rice. Not a question, just saying, dropping late, looking forward to catching up. Thank you so much. Stephen Dillon, do you think Arianne will survive the series? Oh, tough question. I don't think we know. It's possible. I think Arianne, however, will tie herself very closely to Fagon, and I think that he is going to be not long for the world. I think that not long for the world. I think he'll survive the Winds of Winter. I think that he will die early on in A Dream of Spring, and I think that she possibly will even be married to him by that point. And so I think that she will probably die. We don't know, but probably, which is a shame. I like Arianne as a character, but I think that she is a part of Doran Martell's grand plans, and if you're a part of Doran Martell's grand plans, then you almost always will, I'm afraid, not survive. And I had Michaela S. Hey, Michaela, saying, hey, Robert, can't stay long. We'll rewatch later. Just showing love and support to the channel. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. And Pipeweed randomly spotted the question. So, does Jon get a new moniker once resurrected? Melisandre proclaiming him Azor Ahai, possibly. Yes, that's possible. I think that at some point she will recognize that he is, or she will claim that he is Azor Ahai reborn, possibly through the way that he gets resurrected, possibly through the fact that Stannis dies, possibly through the fact that she starts to realize when you read her chapter in Dance with Dragons, and it's like, I asked to see Azor Ahai and all I see is snow, capital S, Jon Snow. Maybe she will look back and go, maybe he is Azor Ahai reborn. So I think that's I think she will definitely be calling him or following him at some point in the Winds of Winter. Donald Peoples, with all of the shared symbolism and descriptive wording between the others and the Kingsguard, do you think there is a Night King / leader figure? Possibly. So the symbolism with the others. Next Wednesday, I have got another in my Secrets of series that I would highly recommend you watch, which is with a first timer to this channel, but he's excellent. Jon Bronsteris, if you're on Twitter, he's on Bronsteris, and he sometimes does a few sort of theory essays on things. He was talking about the others, and he came out with some fantastic symbolism there. So if you're interested in symbolism of the others, then do check that out on Wednesday. This is, I'm afraid, the third of those three ones with the Secrets of series where my audio wasn't working, but his worked perfectly, and he's talking a lot more than me in this one, so I would highly recommend you check it out. Yes, there is some link across with shared symbolism with the others and the Kingsguard. Does this mean that there is a Night King or leader figure? I don't think it means it necessarily, but it's possible that we will get some sort of figurehead for the others in this book. Not saying definitely. I don't think. I think the showrunners are very clear that they created a character so that people would be able to emote, even if negatively, against that character. The Night King was a character that they could show on a very individual level what happened in order to create the others, and then focus in on what that meant in terms of what they were trying to achieve going forward. So the Night King is not necessarily a book character, is what we're saying. Okay, I think I have caught up on questions from the chat for the time being. Do carry on putting questions down in there. I've got loads of questions from my patrons that I want to get to. But I did want to say a huge thank you. I put up last, I don't know what it was, Saturday perhaps. I did, for the first time, I tried a new-ish feature on YouTube, which is that of a charity premiere. And so I launched a video. This was one of my Secrets of series, Secrets of the Children in the Forest with Tony Teflon. We had a conversation for about an hour. And from that, there was a live chat going on. And anyone who did super chat, super sticker, or just donated, there was a donation button, the money went straight to the charity. And the charity is a fantastic charity who do excellent work in bringing people out from refugees out from war zones, completely innocent people who've got caught up in problems that are not their own, and just take them out, save them, and give them a little bit of help on their way. International Rescue Committee is the charity. They do fantastic work, and I was blown away. I honestly say I've been doing this for a while, and this is the first time I've tried this feature. And I just want to say thank you. I had no idea how much money I could raise for an excellent cause through this. I set a target of $500, which is way beyond anything I thought I would probably be able to collect through this. And we blew past that in less than 10 minutes. And as it stands, it's somewhere over $2,500. And if you've not watched it or had a chance to contribute, go and have a look. It's down on the channel. The secret is called Secrets of the Children of the Forest. And if you watch that video, there's a button there that you can click to donate. And I was hugely touched. I as you can tell, I'm slightly speechless. I had not realized the reach that is there and the ability to do good things. And I hope that this is a chance that I can take to do more, to pay back more. The IRC, the International Rescue Committee, it was a sort of a semi-official charity for Game of Thrones. Lena Headey is one of the spokespeople for it. It gets to the heart of one of the key things that A Song of Ice and Fire focuses in on, which is the fact that you get these wars, these horrific things going on in the world, and who suffers? The people who can't look after themselves, the people who are caught up in it for no reason other than geographical accident, the small folk, as George R. R. Martin would call them. And this is all about trying to help them. And so I just wanted to say a huge thank you. If you contributed, if you watched the video, if you watch the video and watch the adverts, then I'm going to contribute any income I get from the adverts on that video as well to this cause. So thank you for that. I could probably talk about this for a long time, but I was hugely touched, and trust me, this is not the last time that I'm going to be trying to do some good with what we've got here, because I think this is an immensely generous and wonderful community, and I think that we can do amazing things. So thank you. I always try and use this time roughly halfway through to just say a few things which are coming up on the channel. I already slightly trailed it, which is to say I am doing a video on how big is the Winds of Winter going to be. I've been talking about the Winds of Winter for so long that I feel that I've got a handle on roughly the storylines that we need to be covering. So how big is this going to be? So keep an eye out for that at some point in the next couple of weeks. That's coming through. The Lord of the Rings videos, obviously keeping on coming. And patrons, I say it every time, thank you. I simply cannot do this without you. The latest thing I've been trying to do for my patrons, I've been giving them opportunity with these live streams. We've been going through characters in the Winds of Winter, just to focus in on what might happen to those characters. What I ask my patrons, $10 plus, there's different benefits at different levels. This is one of the things I do for those at $10 plus level, is an opportunity to influence what I do on this channel, what videos I create, and they want me to look at houses, interesting houses in the world of Ice and Fire. So we're going to be looking at, for the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at some fascinating houses, definitely House Stark, House Targaryen, but also some of the interesting ones like the High Towers. What's going on with the High Towers? What about the Velaryons? I may dip into a few houses that I love, like House Dane, House Reed as well. So that's what's coming up on the live streams over the next few weeks and months. That's what my patrons want, and I will be doing what my patrons want. So thank you so much. If you're interested in being a patron, either just supporting this channel, getting access to some of the benefits there is a link down in the description to that. But talking of my patrons, let's get to some of the questions from my patrons. So, Henning J, what are the downside effects of George R.R. Martin's Gardener approach to minor characters? Or in other words, do you share the view that George R.R. Martin has in fact massive problems to get all those loose ends and threads back together in a way that is still logical and sensible? I know he has a rough master plan for the main characters, but what about the minor characters? Will they be left open-ended? So some will be left open-ended. I am absolutely sure of this. George R. R. Martin has a huge amount of 2,000 characters, I think, was what I last heard. So are we going to get a character arc for each of those characters? Well, no, obviously we're not. But we will see the characters, the main characters will have their arcs fulfilled in some satisfying way. Smaller characters, we will see where they end at the end of this story. Now, that may or may not be satisfying on all of the characters, but the sort of the major minor characters, the people like Bronn, Ben Plum, characters who are significant in some way, we will see what happens to them. I don't think we're going to get many characters that we do not know at all what happened to them, other than very, very minor characters. So does he have a huge problem in terms of getting all those loose ends and threads? Yes, but I think that this is what he is trying to do with the Winds of Winter. To meta level, the story is at its largest, and at a meta level, what he is trying to do with the Winds of Winter is bring it back down in again. We're going to bring the Starks back. Bran, Rickon, Sansa, Arya, they're all going to come back in again. Daenerys, finally, she's going to finish all of the stuff that she was doing with Essos. She's going to bring that back in again. Euron is going to start tying in, not just doing his own thing, but he's going to tie into the main plot. So what we're going to see with the Winds of Winter is all of these massive plot lines start to come back in again. Now, that means some of the smaller plot lines will get tied off. So we will see an end to the Marine plot lines, for example. We get like the Green Grace or whatever. We will see what happens to her. That doesn't mean that her ending is necessarily satisfying, but we will see what happens to her. And then we will move on. So in the same way as we had in book one was Micah, the guy who got run down by the Hound, was his storyline satisfying? Well, I don't know. He was playing a role in the greater narrative. And that is what we're going to see with a lot of the characters in The Winds of Winter. Eric Fogg saying, do you think there's any way to actually complete the series in 2 or more books? Well, I think actually, Eric, I covered this one a little bit earlier. I think he will complete it in technically 2 books, but each book will probably be broken down into a number of technical books. I think I'll stick my neck out. I think The Winds of Winter will be 3 physical books. I think it will be The Winds of Winter will be effectively a trilogy in the same way that, say, The Lord of the Rings was a trilogy, 1 story, but over 3 books. Megan V, hi there, Megan, saying from Carl Karsneck, hi there, Carl. A bit off topic, but what is Shade of the Evening actually made out of? If the weirwood paste is really Jojen / people, what is the inverse opposite to that is used to make Shade of the Evening? So I think that Shade of the Evening, in fact, the Shade of the Evening trees seem to be a sort of a poisoned or corrupted version of weirwood trees in some way. Perhaps it's because they got cut off from the main weirwood network when we had the sundering with the Hammer of the Waters and the 2 continents got broken apart. Perhaps that was going on. But so the Shade of the Evening is the equivalent of the weirwood paste in that it opens up whoever drinks it to magical powers, understanding the prophetic world, the overlay of visions of the world that's going on. So what is it made of? I think exactly the same thing that weirwood paste is made of. It is made of some kind of sap from the Shade of the Evening trees and some kind of sacrifice. So weirwood paste almost certainly is made from the sap of some kind of weirwood trees plus a sacrifice, which in this case was Jojen. And I think that what we'll see with Shade of the Evening is made from some sort of sap from the Shade of the Evening trees and some sort of sacrifice. We never actually see it, but I think that is what is going on. Question from the Vigstable here. It's just saying, hope you're doing well. I am doing well, thank you so much. And Bronsteris is in the house apparently. Says 26 Art Girl. I can't see Bronsteris in the chat, but if he is, hi there, great to see you. And I was talking about my video I did with you earlier, talking about the others. That will be going live this coming Wednesday. So I would highly recommend you go and check that out. John had a huge amount of excellent points. There is Bronsteris I see in the chat. Bronsteris is our resident lurking lawyer. Yeah, he's a very clever guy, as you will see when that video goes live. Mr. E. Knight, thank you so much. The Winds of Winter will obviously focus a great deal on the northern plot lines and the mounting threat of the others, but how much Dornish plot wrap up or continuance will happen? Will Doran or the Sand Snakes succeed? So I think the Winds of Winter will cover lots of things. is my short answer to this one. And yes, that means that we are going to see the Dornish plotline. So we've already had 2 of the pre-release chapters from the Winds of Winter have been Arianne chapters, so we're seeing the Dornish plotline there. We've also had confirmation from George R. R. Martin that he has been writing an Areo Hotah chapter. He is the bodyguard, is probably doing him an injustice, but let's call him the bodyguard of Doran Martell. He is the person through whose perspective we see what's going on with Doran. Now, if we're seeing at least 1 chapter from him, and we've had a chapter from him in the last 2 books, possibly we will have a couple. I don't think we'll have many, but almost certainly what we will see is that Quentyn Martell, who got burned and killed by the dragons when he tried to capture one, his body, his bones will be sent back to Dorne. We've already heard that is what Barristan Selmy has said must happen. So he's going to send them back, and at some point Doran Martell will get them, and we will see what his reaction to that is. So his reaction is almost certainly going to be, so this means that Daenerys has said no, right? Therefore I will throw in my lot with the other pretender who is claiming to be a Targaryen, who is Fagon. So I think we will see Arianne and Doran throw themselves in with Fagon. The Sand Snakes will probably therefore initially support this, but when it goes wrong, as it will go wrong eventually, then they will almost certainly turn on Doran. So that, I think, is what is going to be happening with the sort of the Dornish plotline. Disputed Lands is in. Hi there, Amanda. Great to see you too. Question from Maura Lee. Arya is still in Braavos at the beginning of her POV chapters in the Winds of Winter. We know she will eventually return to Westeros and back to Winterfell. What do you see will be Arya's main motivation or motivating factor that will make her return to Winterfell as opposed to staying in Braavos or traveling anywhere else? So we see it time and again with Arya's chapters. This is about her retaining her Stark identity. She has needled a sword that Jon gave her that she hides. She is commissioned to go off and take on various roles for the Faceless Men. She kills people that she wants to kill, who she thinks deserve to die, and Night's Watchman who's abandoned the cause. In pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter, she kills somebody who's on her kill list. She is not becoming no one. She is retaining her Stark identity, and that is what is going to eventually lead to her leaving the Faceless Men. And she will go back to Westeros. And what does she do then? Well, she's got 2 possible places to go. And this is one of the things that I think that they did show reasonably well on the show, was that she had to make a decision. And they showed her at the inn at the crossroads, which, again, I thought was an excellent place to show this. She could go south. That is where Cersei is, where the mountain is, where Ilyn Payne is, people who are on her list. Or she could go north, because the Starks are reclaiming Winterfell. Jon is there. She was very close to Jon. What does she do? And she decides to go north. I think that is what is going to happen again in the books. Whether it's exactly the same, that she gets to the inn at the crossroads, meets Hot Pie, decides to go north, probably not exactly like that. But she will decide to go north, I suspect, back up to help out the Starks, to rejoin them, because she has retained or regained her Stark identity. She's gained many skills along the way, But her kill list is not over. She is going to her prayer, as it is in the books. She is going to finish off that kill list, and she will do that by going back to Westeros and finishing it off. But first of all, she has to reclaim her Stark identity. Sam Clonce II. Let's look forward. It's someday in the future, and George R. Martin's Not a Blog contains the words we've been anxiously waiting for. Winds of Winter is done. After we all wipe away the tears of joy and finish our praise dances, we begin anticipating the great videos. Suddenly my heart fills with dread because I'm worried that the pace in which I read won't be fast enough to be ready for the aforementioned great videos on the Winds of Winter. So this is my long way of asking, have you thought about the content you anticipate creating once the Winds of Winter launches? And how long will we have before spoilers start flying like they were launched from a trebuchet? Okay, great question. So in terms of the Winds of Winter, whenever it happens, I have given some thought to this. I suspect that there will be a lot of different people doing videos on this. I'm not the only person who will have interesting insight on this. You know, the kinds of people whose views I value. I try to bring them on this channel when I can, and I would highly recommend you check out as many different people as you possibly can. In terms of what I do, I will probably do something along the lines of what I did for Fire and Blood, which is I will read the story quickly, not just because I want to create videos, but because I am fascinated by this story. I'm slightly addicted to it, and I will get through it as quickly as I possibly can. After that, I will probably do some sort of very quick reflection video. I think on the Fire and Blood, I did something like 10 things we learned from Fire and Blood. I will do some sort of maybe 1 or 2 videos along those lines. Following that, I like the idea of doing characters going through the Winds of Winter, what actually is happening to Tyrion, breaking that down, but also answering the questions, the focusing in on the key issues that people have coming out from it. So that's really what I'm going to be doing. And as always, I will just try and focus in on what my patrons ask me to be doing. So how long have you got before spoilers? I don't know. It depends. If you're on Twitter, then probably not very long, to be honest. But just as with all of these things, I suspect that most responsible people will try and keep things back for as long as they can. But I know that I won't be able to stop myself from making videos. I will try and make, certainly for the first little while, my titles and thumbnails not too spoilery, but people will want to address the issues within it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. It's something that will happen whenever it happens. Not going to be this year, probably won't be next year, but we'll see. Nicola Trickler saying, hi Robert, thank you for being the beacon of light in these troubling times. Thank you, that's a really kind thing to say. Do you think George R. R. Martin will allow Ghost to survive to the end? I mean, he's the ultimate good boy, but once Jon is resurrected and Bloodraven has passed, his role is over. Do you think that George R. R. Martin will sacrifice all direwolves to make the ending more bittersweet? So no, on the short kind of issue of will he kill them in order to make the ending bittersweet. I don't think that's what he's about. I don't think he's going to kill people just to hurt us. I think he's going to allow direwolves to have their character arcs in the same way that humans have their character arcs. Now, as you point out, Ghost's main points so far, his main roles so far, have been working with or being Bloodraven's puppet to show Jon various things, to guide him in various ways, to protect him, and all the rest of it. If that's new to you, have a check out of my videos. I did one quite recently about Ghost and Jon. But once Jon has come back, and my theory is that Jon will, when he dies, he will cast himself into Ghost, and we may even have a Ghost chapter of Jon in Ghost before he comes back into his human form. Now, does that mean Ghost's story is over? Possibly. Does that mean George R. R. Martin's going to kill him? Not necessarily. His writing style is that of a gardener, so Ghost will follow what George R. R. Martin thinks is the natural course of his character going forward. One bit of hope I have for Ghost, I have to say, though, is, and this is sort of grasping at prophetic straws, perhaps, but Daenerys in the House of the Undying gets told 3 mounts you must ride: 1 to bed, 1 to dread, and 1 to love. Now, many people have come out with many different interpretations of this. At some point soon, I will do my own interpretation of what this means, but most people agree that in terms of these mounts, these are things that Dany will literally ride. So to bed seems to be the mount to bed seems to be the white horse that she rides on her wedding night with Drogo. That seems to be the mount to bed. The mount to dread very clearly seems to be Drogon, the dragon. She rides the dragon. People dread it. It brings up these ideas of Balerion the Black Dread that clearly has echoes in Drogon. So yes, that works. And what about this one mount that she must ride to love? She's going to ride something to love in some way. It's possible that is Ghost. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any firm reason for how this will happen, but she will ride one other animal, appears to be the implication, to love, to someone she loves. And the clear implication is that she will fall in love with Jon Snow, and so she will ride something to him. What is that? It's not Drogon. Ghost seems the most likely alternative. Reflective Rambling saying for Carl Karsnack, thank you, Karsnock. So thank you so much for picking up on his question. Is there any scenario whereby Dany willingly sacrifices herself in some way in order to save King's Landing or stop the others? I realize it's a bit tropey, but maybe better than Jon doing so. It's possible. I think Jon killing Daenerys is almost baked in now. I'll say that. When I say almost, I don't think it's 100%, but I did a video coming up for 3 years ago now where I was looking at Daenerys' visions in the House of the Undying, and I came to the conclusion that probably meant that Jon will kill Daenerys. If you're interested, by all means, go and search out that video. It was a long time ago, but I think the foreshadowing was there that Jon would kill Dany. Now, the question is why? Obviously, why would he kill her? We know the kind of the echoing through Azor Ahai that Azor Ahai would kill Nyssa, and that would be the forging of Lightbringer and all the rest of it. And that does imply that it happens before the end of the others, because Lightbringer was used to kill the others or to end the war. We're not actually shown ever what happens with Lightbringer. We just get the story of how Lightbringer was forged. So it's possible. it's possible that it will happen before then. Daenerys would have to change a lot in order to be sacrificing herself in that way. She would have to fundamentally and absolutely believe that that is her role. I can't personally see that, but most of these things do appear quite tropey, as you say, and George R. R. Martin is not really a tropey writer, so I think that the dots, this is one of those things where the dots are there. We can see the outline of what's going to happen, but the exact details of how and why we do not yet have the information. And we can theorize, but it's tinfoily theorizing. So we know roughly that that's what's going to happen, but exactly how and why and when it's not so clear. Dante Watson saying first live stream, welcome, and welcome anyone who this is your first live stream. Do you think that the dragons were already in the 14 Flames, or were they brought from a shy? Okay, so the 14 Flames being old Valyria. The dragons almost certainly were off in the Far East to start with. They probably still are over in the Shadowlands and beyond. What the Valyrians seem to have managed to do is to tame them, is the wrong word, but to manage to bond with them, and I've done many videos on this, and I've had people like Disputed Lands coming on here talking very persuasively about the fact that the Valyrians bonded themselves in a slightly more genetic way to the dragons. So I don't think it was that the Valyrians just stumbled across dragons in Valyria. They may well have done, but that was not where the dragons came from initially. The dragons seem to have come from further east. So were they brought from a shy? I don't think they were necessarily brought there. The whole area of Asshai UT seems to have been an ancient empire, far beyond the time of not just the Valyrian freehold, but the old empire of Geese, way back beyond that. That was an ancient empire, and that seems to have extended as far as Valyria. So that is probably where the kind of the link comes across from. Robin Saunders, thank you so much, saying, does magic have goals, e.g. Beric? Not 100% sure on the exactly in terms of what you mean there. So Beric was reborn through magic. So his resurrection was through magic, and his one, I've said this many times, his initial resurrection is the only one that there appears to be neither intentionality. When we get Thoros of Myr, he was not intending to bring him back, nor does it seem to have specific sacrifice to it. That is the one bit of magic that does not fit in any of these other kind of understandings that we have. Yes, we can sort of talk around it and say, well, the language was about rebirth and there were deaths happening around that time, but there was neither of the two things that we understand as being important for magic. And secondly, tinfoil, could Widow's Wail symbolize White Walkers? Thanks for all you do. Sorry, I have two questions. It's cheeky. Well, that's fine. So in terms of Widow's Wail, does it symbolize the White Walkers? Possibly. Personally, I think that Widow's Wail is one of the two swords which was forged from ice, which is the Stark family sword. And the other one is Oathkeeper. Now, if you take the names together, I think actually these thematically symbolize Lyanna Stark. And Oathkeeper reflects Ned Stark keeping his promise. Widow's Wail, Lyanna was the widow of Rhaegar, and she did wail. And I think that, I say she did wail, she clearly mourned him, and Ned heard her cries when he came to the Tower of Joy. So I think that is what the names are symbolizing at that meta level, but they also clearly have their own importance. Oathkeeper has its importance for Jaime, for Brienne, and all the rest of it, and Widow's Wail will, I'm sure, gain its own importance for the role of that sword going through into the Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. Jazz Singh saying, hi Robert, firstly thanks for being such an informative voice in the community, especially for relative newbies to A Song of Ice and Fire like me. My question relates to Varys and what his role will be in Winds. Will he continue to influence Westerosi politics from the shadows, or will he expose himself to the public as a key player behind Fagon's uprising? And what do you think will happen to Varys once Fagon meets his demise? Well, on the last question, I think he will die when Fagon dies. I think he will die by Dragonfire. I think the show, his story was very different leading up to it, but I think him being killed by Dragonfire is probably going to be his fate. He will, I suspect, be the key person within King's Landing, setting things up for Fagon's arrival. Once Fagon arrives, then he will re-emerge from the shadows and he will take on the role as Master of Whisperers again. He will then be serving the next king after many kings. He served Aerys II, he served Robert Baratheon, he served Joffrey and Tommen, and now he's going to be serving this new king, Fagon. So I think that is what he's going to be up to. I think that he will be working behind the scenes until Fagon arrives, and then once Fagon arrives, I think that he will bring himself back and become once more a part of the small council. Trent Helming saying, will we or Tyrion find out what happened to Tysha? This is a great little subplot here. So Tyrion, through the last book, has been constantly repeating the question that Tywin said, which is, when Tyrion says to him, where did Tysha go, effectively? And he says, Tywin says, well, wherever whores go. And Tyrion is always asking, well, where do whores go? That is one of the sort of the drives for him. He's wondering, where can I find Tysha, his first wife, his first love? Will Tyrion find her? I actually think he probably will, but not in a kind of a wonderful romance finding her at the end of it. I think that he will probably find her somewhere in the Free Cities, and he will realize that he has moved on and she has moved on, and actually that is now a thing in the past, and this will help him move on from his pain about what happened with him and Jaime initially, and also a little bit from him killing his father. So will he find her? Yeah, I think he will, but it's not going to be this great romantic end point. Agnat86 says Arya will become no one, Bran will become the three-eyed raven, Sansa becomes Elaine Stone. Is losing their identity a theme for the Stark siblings? Well, losing and regaining their identity is going to be a key thing for some of the Stark siblings. So Arya has been many people. If you go through, and I did count at some point, I think it's like 16 or 17 different names she goes by all the way through, starting from Arya Stark, and then she's like Arya Underfoot, Horseface, Then she has a whole variety of names that she takes on while in Westeros, Nan and a few others, and then she heads off Harry, and then she heads off over to Braavos, and then she becomes Cat of the Cradles, and then she becomes Mercy, and she becomes lots of different characters. Her identity is indeed mixed up, but the point for Arya is that fundamentally she will come back, whether she actually says it, I am Arya Stark of Winterfell, whether she says that or not, it will be the reclamation of her identity that drives her in the second half of the Winds of Winter. Similarly, we get Sansa. She has to hide and pretend to be someone else, but her reclamation of her character as Sansa Stark is going to be what drives her in the second half of the Winds of Winter. So that's what's going on there. Bran will be something different because he will get yes, he will remain Bran Stark, but he will slowly be taken over by the Weirwood Network, and so he will be the three-eyed crow or whatever identity that becomes. So it's George R. R. Martin loves this idea of like various different characters all having some sort of thematic link and then breaking the link. So it's not going to be that all the different Starks just take on different characters and stay there. Some of them will take on different characters and then come back to being a Stark. Some of them will take on different characters and then stay those different characters. Lou Kernock saying, I've become fascinated with the potential role of House Blackwood of Raventree Hall. There appears to be a lot of Blackwood DNA in our main protagonists. Ned's great-grandmother was a Blackwood. Aegon V was married to Betha Blackwood. So the next two Targaryen generations are also 50-50 Targaryen Blackwood. What if the children of the forest need Blackwood blood absorbed into the Weirwood Network to bring about their master plan? I know blaming Bloodraven for all manipulations, but the political knowledge he added to the network is just one of many elements of the Weirwood tree web. What is the children's ultimate goal in getting Bran on the throne? Yeah, so Bloodraven is himself half Blackwood. We have to say that. The Blackwoods are the preeminent First Men family south of the Neck. Now, this means that given the fact that the Starks broadly stayed north of the Neck for hundreds of years, thousands of years, if you are going to get First Men blood involved in any of your weird eugenics politicking, which is what I think Bloodraven was after, then you go through House Blackwood. That is where they are involved in all of this. They were almost certainly kings of the First Men in some way, shape, or form. What is when you're sort of ending up with what is the children's ultimate goal in getting Bran on the throne, and therefore what is House Blackwood's role in this? House Blackwood have been the way to get the First Men blood into the bloodline of the prince that was promised. In Bloodraven's perspective, that was their specific role. In terms of the children's ultimate goal in getting Bran on the throne, I think it's as simple as they were in charge of Westeros. Then there were lots of invasions and they weren't, and they just want to get back in control again. It's a long-term game, but I think that's what they are about. Maura Lee says, Jaqen H'ghar is at the Citadel. He is. Do you think he is looking for the book in order to destroy the dragons? Yes, I do. Do you think he will find it before Euron gets there and possibly lays waste to the Citadel? So we get this, for those who haven't picked up on these links in the books. Jaqen H'ghar, after changing his face with Arya, We get a clear description of his new face. Someone with that very clear description then turns up at the Citadel, and he takes on the character of this person called Pate. And we see him there right at the end of A Dance with Dragons, getting in with Marwyn the Mage's group, which is where Sam has got himself involved with. Now, probably he is after this book called The Death of Dragons. Now, why do the Faceless Men want to know about how to kill dragons? I did a whole video series on this, but the short answer is that the things that we take as being cool catchphrases for the Faceless Men are not just cool catchphrases. Like, all men must die. That's not just a cool catchphrase. That is a statement of faith. That's what they ultimately believe. Everyone must die. Someone who does not die when they should die, that's heresy. So they look around them and they think there's heresy everywhere. The north of the wall, the others, that's heresy. The Firewhites is heresy. What Qyburn is doing is heresy. What about the dragons? Well, they don't particularly like dragons. They're closely connected in with Braavosi society. They remember that dragons were what the Valyrians used in order to enforce slavery across the world. They're not a big fan of dragons, but they want to get rid of the people who are doing all of this heresy. So what do the Faceless Men want? They want to get rid of all of these people who are doing all this heretical, people surviving beyond the grave, but then they also want to get rid of the dragons. So that's their master plan at the end of it. And yes, of course, they want to get a book on how to kill dragons. Will he get that book? I think he will. I think that this is one of the things I suspect with the Faceless Men. We're not actually going to see directly what they do. We're just going to have to figure it out through other people. So the only main character at the moment in the Citadel is Sam. So I think that we will just see what Pate does in the kind of the shadows, in the corners of Sam's vision. We will see what Pate is up to, and I think we will see him, Jaqen H'ghar, escape with that book. Micah Devaney, thank you for the super chat, saying, do you think George R. R. Martin is taking so long to release The Winds of Winter due to feedback from the television show? No, I don't. I think so. The Winds of Winter is going to be huge simply because he wrote it in the way that he did. He built up to it in the way that he did. It has to be massive because he created so many storylines. He created so many different disparate sorts of storylines, characters all over the place, that the next book has to be huge. And frankly, he is getting older and slowing down, and he's not writing as fast as he used to, and he's admitted as much. So that is why it is taking longer. He didn't use this phrase, but he did get a degree of writer's block while the show was on because he felt some kind of pressure to deliver before the show finished. But he's free from that now. Is he going to change anything because of the show and the backlash? I don't think so, because he's set up so much now. The foreshadowing is there. We know a lot of what's going to be happening with the plot, but simply because of the stuff that he's established so far. What, at a very high level, what the show did was shortcut to every ending. That is what it is. Jaime and Cersei dying at the same time, that's going to happen in the books. Is it going to happen the same way? Perhaps not. That Jon killing Daenerys, I think that's going to happen in the books. Is it going to happen in the same way? Perhaps not. So if you take what happened on the show and say, well, that seems like the end point, but all of the stuff that led there is going to be different, then you're probably not going to be too far wrong. There is no way that we're going to have Jaime and Brienne's relationship, whatever it is, being restricted to 3 scenes, one of which is them getting together, one of which was Jaime and Tyrion talking about it, one of which was Jaime ending it and never actually seeing them together. That is not what's going to happen in the books. So we're in a world where George R. R. Martin, obviously he will be aware of the backlash against the TV show, but I think that he will recognize that the TV show got it wrong because they cut corners. And he said as much many, many times. He said, I think that we should have 10, 13 series of this, but that didn't happen. The showrunners wanted to rush ahead with it. So I think that's where he is at. And I think that is pretty much the situation we're going to have. He will not be changed by what happens. What happened on the show. Question from, I think I had one in the chat. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, I did. So, flaming on my chest, 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't see a question there, but thank you so much for the super chat. No, I can't see any questions attached to that one. Let's go to some more questions from my patrons. Paul Barry, what role do you think the Braavosi Navy might play in the Winds of Winter? I feel like we're giving a big refresher in Fire and Blood. My suspicion is that was deliberate. Who might it support? Who might it oppose? So the Braavosi, as a whole, they oppose slavery, which might leave them supportive of Daenerys, but they also oppose the Valyrians and their way of taking control of everything. So I think the short answer is they're going to be conflicted. But yes, we were reminded of them in Fire and Blood. Yes, we were reminded of the fact that they have absolute control and they can create a new warship every day. This means that they can create a huge navy very, very quickly. They will, I am sure, have a role in the Winds of Winter. And I think that they will probably start feeling threatened by Daenerys. Yes, she's got rid of slavery, but she will take over Slavers Bay. She will almost certainly burn down various other free cities. And they will start to be concerned for their own safety. This seems to be something which is running through what we saw in Fire and Blood, is that Braavos were looking to ensure their own safety going forward. So who will they come out in favor of? Just protecting their own interests is basically it. I think that there's a chance that out of everyone there, who seems the person they most want to support, probably Stannis, frankly. And Stannis is probably not long for this world, but he has sent Justin Massey with a huge amount of money over to the Free Cities. Might they throw their lot in behind him? It's possible. I don't know. Rudy H, thank you for the super chat, saying, can you please consider also prepping us for a Dream of Spring with your videos and insight when and if we ever get the Winds of Winter? Yes, well, when we get the Winds of Winter, first of all, yes, I will spend a long time working my way through the Winds of Winter, trying to break it down, all the rest of it. To be clear, because this is something George R. R. Martin has been clear about, he is not writing A Dream of Spring alongside the Winds of Winter. Once we get the Winds of Winter, he is then going to start on A Dream of Spring. After, I think, another Duncan Egg. He gave his writing schedule a while ago. But it will be several years wait before we get to A Dream of Spring. So, yes, I will definitely turn my attention at that point to what happens in the Dream of Spring once we've had a chance to digest the Winds of Winter. But it still seems such a long way away. When George R. R. Martin says that he's still a long way from finishing the Winds of Winter, I think we have to believe him. It's not going to be this year, probably not going to be next year, which makes me sad. But I think that's where we're at. Even if he carries on writing at the current rate, he's doing maybe a chapter a week at the moment. From what he said was sorry, complete digression, and forgive the head and hands moment. But when he was talking on his blog about this, he said, he completed a chapter yesterday and another one a bit earlier and another one the previous week. It felt like the rate of chapter completion was maybe one a week. And just trying to read the runes, we shouldn't do this. It's this way lies madness, people. So please ignore everything I'm going to say. But what the chapters that he was talking about seemed to imply that he was maybe halfway through this. I don't know. There's a long way to go, and if it happens next year, I will be delighted, but I'm not now expecting it until 2022, I have to say. Question from Flaming on My Chest 1234 saying, how do you think Jon will be changed by his resurrection? What in his personality will be different? So this is something I've talked about a couple of times, and I have been recently rereading the Robin Hobb series, the Farseer series, which I won't go into all of the detail now, but the links across are very clear. That they're as close as writers can be. Robin Hobb and George R. R. Martin, they shared an agent, and they've shared manuscripts, and the links between their two stories are very, very strong. And the main character, close your ears, spoilers if you've not read it and were wanting to read it, the main character in the Farseer series is this guy called Fitz, who is the bastard child of the heir to the throne, who has a bond with a wolf, and is in many ways the child of prophecy. The links across to Jon Snow are huge. He gets killed, and he survives by effectively walking into his wolf and then being pulled from his wolf back into his lifeless body. And that's how he survives. So I've been rereading this. That's a very, and for those who are aficionados of that, I appreciate that is a very high level. And there are many nuances that I've missed out on that, but that's the high level thing that's going on there. Now, why should we care about this? As I said, because George R. R. Martin is a huge fan of Robin Hobb, and because the links between the two stories are very strong, and therefore I think we need to have a look to see what does this mean for Fitz after he returns from being inside a wolf to being a human again. Well, this does affect him. He remains very strongly bonded to his wolf, and his character does change a little bit. He becomes slightly more wolfish, and he's always sort of tempted to go and return back into his wolf and all the rest of it. So the short version of this is we should expect Jon Snow to be more wolfish when he returns. What does more wolfish mean? Well, probably more predator-like, probably more pack-like, but also probably more loner-ish, if you can hold those two thoughts together at the same time. He is not going to seem as human and as empathetic a character as he was before. So one other thing I would sort of add into this mix is this idea that Jon Snow has always been a character who's thinking about the future and his role and all the rest of it. Wolves think more about the now, the here and now. So perhaps we would expect him to be thinking more about the here and now than the future. So that's another aspect. How will he change? He will be more wolfish, and I think it is up to each of us to understand what more wolfish might mean. Question from Milton Duffy saying, "Let's get a like spike for the talented Robert." Thank you very much. I've not heard that phrase before, but that's very kind. Rosie saying, "Do you think Jon will change in appearance?" Yes, probably he will. So physically, his body will have been frozen in the ice cells. It will not be the same body that he had before. He's been stabbed multiple times. He's been killed. His body has just frozen in position. He's not going to look the same as he was before. So ignore the sort of the Kit Harington kind of like still very attractive after dying and coming back. No, he's not going to be like that. The Stark and Winterfell asks, why was Illyrio Mopatis running around King's Landing with Varys in Book 1? Shouldn't he have been with Daenerys at that time instead of climbing out of wells and scaring Arya? So in Book 1, George R. Martin said, so the Daenerys chapters started a little bit earlier in time than the others did. So the stuff with Illyrio and Daenerys happened a little bit earlier in the plot. So Daenerys went off with the Dothraki, after which Illyrio, having felt that his bit of that plot had succeeded, then nipped over to King's Landing and talked to Varys, and they tried to figure out what was going to happen from there. So that was why that felt slightly weird that he was in two places at once. The stuff with Illyrio over in Pentos happened a little bit earlier. Bride of Fire is asking about the Sand Snakes. What do you think the Sand Snakes' role will be in the Winds of Winter? Personally, I'm a fan of the theory that Tyene will be behind Tommen's death by poisoning him. Also, do you think House Ulla will have a more sinister role to play against Dany's invasion, considering their history? So the Sand Snakes, as I say, they've actually not got huge. I mean, they were big in the show, but they're not as huge in the books, to be honest. Now they are there wanting vengeance for the death of their father, Oberyn Martell, which is understandable. And so Doran basically imprisons them until the head of the mountain who killed Oberyn Martell is produced, and then he releases them, basically saying that we've now got vengeance. He is now on another one of his endless plots to marry the Martells to the Targaryens. So Quentyn will die, has died, and Arianne is probably going to end up marrying Fagon. When that plot stops when that plan stops working, I'm sure that's the point at which the Sand Snakes will say, you know what, enough is enough. We tried being patient, but we have to get vengeance on the Lannisters, and we have to get vengeance for what happened. We have to get the Martells back into power. And Doran, you've come up with half a dozen plans and none of them have worked. So Doran is a clever person. It's just none of his plans have ever worked, poor guy. So I think that's the point at which the Sand Snakes will start getting involved and will take control over in Dorne. Do I think that House Ulla will have a more sinister role to play against Dany's invasion, considering their history? So Dany's invasion is only a secondary invasion of Westeros. The first invasion of Westeros is going to be, or already is, Aegon's invasion, and he will have Dorne on his side. I think that Dorne will sign them up fully. When Daenerys invades, it's going to be slightly more damp, squibby. She will take Dragonstone, I'm sure. Then there will be a whole load of trying to figure out what's going on with Aegon. Then her mind will be refocused into what's going on with the others before the end of it all. So I think that that's what's going on. So I don't think Dany is going to be doing an invasion of Dorne per se. House Ulla, for those who do not know, they've got an incredibly sinister reputation down in Dorne. They were the ones who almost certainly were involved in the death of Rhaenys Targaryen way back in the day. So I don't think we're going to see them come to the fore in this, because I don't think we're going to see a specific invasion from Daenerys into Dorne. Maestermancer saying, I'm curious about Mance Raider's storyline going forward. It seems as if an author goes to the effort of fake killing a character, then they must be important going forward. I feel that it has to be more than just the pink letter, assuming he wrote it, and things could get a bit awkward if both he and Stannis survive the Battle of Winterfell. Also, in case nobody else asked this, how do you think the others will breach the wall? Well, on Mance Raider, yeah, he has got a role going forward, almost certainly. He is going to, having got Theon out, he is now going to escape down into the Winterfell crypts. There's a lot of foreshadowing for this, not least in his name. He's taken the name Abel the Bard, and Bael the Bard, an anagram of Abel the Bard. There's a legend of him going down into the crypts for a year and disappearing down there. So Mance Raider will disappear into the crypts of Winterfell. He's already been asking about it. The question is what he finds down there, and I suspect he will be the person who will, because he's been spending all of his time so far hunting for the Horn of Winter, digging up the graves of lost heroes and kings in north of the Wall. I think that clearly he's a person who's wishing to investigate graves. He will find that the oldest part of the crypts of Winterfell is cut off, and I think that he will discover what's behind it. I think that is his main role going forward. And I think that he will discover the secret history of what happened with the Night's King, and why that old part of the oldest part of the crypts of Winterfell have been effectively boarded off all this time. If you're interested in that theory, I've done several videos on the subject about the crypts of Winterfell. So do please go and have a look at that. So I think that he's going to discover some of this backstory. I think Sam is going to bring the Horn of Winter up from the south, and then everyone's going to, and Bran is going to appear from the north. And I think they're going to just patch this all together, figure out what on earth the history here is with the Starks and the crypts, and what the point is of having the crypts of Winterfell there. Jared saying, hi Robert, my question involves all of the characters in Essos. George R. R. Martin's Myronese not. How do you think he will resolve the conflict, and what characters will survive to make the trip back to Westeros? Also, feel free to discuss how book Dany's plans will differ from TV Dany on her return home. Okay, so the Myronese knot, for those who don't know, so this was the thing that slowed down George R. R. Martin when he was writing the last book, was what he called the Myronese knot, which is Daenerys in Meereen meets a huge amount of different people. This is more complicated than this. This is why it took him so long to figure it all out. But the short version is that she meets a lot of people, And George R. R. Martin tried to figure out what order all of these people and events have to happen in order for the story to work most effectively. And he unraveled the Myronese knot. He figured out which order everyone had to arrive in, what order events had to happen in. It was about when Drogon went off, when Drogon came back, who was there at different times, when different characters arrived. The iteration of events had to be exactly right, and he did figure that out. And so we see in A Dance with Dragons, that's what we see on the page is the result of all of this figuring stuff out. And he wrote several chapters. He admits that he wrote several chapters that he then had to effectively burn because they were, having tried it didn't work, and he had to start again with characters arriving at different times. So in terms of the Myronese knot, how is he going to resolve it? Well, I think he's already decided how to resolve it. We've had Drogon going away, coming back, taking Daenerys away. We have Quentin Martell. Quentin was one of the characters. George R. R. Martin freely admitted that he tried various different times at which Quentin should arrive, and eventually decided him arriving on the eve of her marriage to Hisdar was the best time for that to happen, and so that's what we saw. The other elements that we haven't yet seen are the points at which other characters arrive in Meereen. Victarion is one of those characters. Also, we get Tyrion, we get Jorah returning, we've got Marwyn the Mage, we've got Moqorro, who's arriving with Victarion. We've got lots of different characters who all have to arrive in there, and then we have to get Daenerys back. So that is he's already figured out what order these different characters arrive in. And broadly speaking, Quentin has already arrived, and then we get Victarion, and then we get Tyrion and Jorah, and then after that we're going to get Marwyn. So that's the sort of the iteration of characters arriving. In terms of Dany's plans differing from TV, Dany, I think that she will arrive at Dragonstone and take that first, as she did on the show, but she will not be faced with Cersei. She will be faced with Vagon, who is in King's Landing and popular in King's Landing. That's going to be the big difference. So that is where things are going to be different. Cersei will be meeting up with Euron, and they will come into play later on in this iteration of events. Stark and Winterfell saying, why was Littlefinger fostered in Riverrun in the first place? I said we were going to be dotting around all over the place. So here we go. So why was Littlefinger fostered in Riverrun, which he was? Wasn't he the son of a very minor lord from the Vale, far away with a different liege lord? Yes. So in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, then Littlefinger's father became friends with Hoster Tully, who was the father of Catelyn Tully and all of the other Tullys. So that is why Littlefinger was fostered there, not because the Littlefingers were particularly or the Baelishes, I should say, not the Littlefingers. The Baelishes were particularly anything. They are a very small house from a different part of the world, and it was just a favor for a friend. That was all it was. Howland's little sister saying, there are two mysterious letters that intrigue us all. One is the pink letter, which is read by Jon Snow, written by an unknown author, and the other is the letter from the Dornish princess Deria's father, Prince Nymor, that was given to King Aegon. If you could choose one letter to read, which one would you select? Please give your reasoning for the selection and what you would guesstimate as to said letter's contents. So we know what the pink letter said. We know, we read it, we hear it, so we know what's in that one already. The question there, the mystery there is who sent it, and I'm reasonably confident, for reasons I've set out in a video, that it was Mance Rayder, not least because of the language and the fact that it is very focused about Mance Rayder in a way that I suspect that Ramsay Bolton wouldn't really care. But so I don't think, well, I don't need to know what's in the contents of that, and I am reasonably certain who wrote it. The other one, the letter, this is going back in the history, back to the letter that went to Aegon the First, Aegon the Conqueror, which effectively ended the attempt to conquer Dorne. That I would love to see the contents of. I speculated on what was in that letter. It follows the death of Queen Rhaenys, which was his sister wife, and it said that he read the letter. His hand gripped the Iron Throne so tight that it cut into him and he bled. He immediately got on his dragon, flew to Dragonstone, came back, and then declared peace. So it's mysterious. I did a video on this setting out what I think was in that letter, but because we do not know, I would love to know what was in that. So of those two, that's the one that I personally find the most mysterious. Morally saying various characters in the Song of Ice and Fire, like Dany, Jaime, and Jon, have dreams and visions. How do you see these dreams and visions playing out in the books as far as each of the characters are concerned? So I'm doing a series on this. I've done 2 so far, I think. I did one on Jaime's vision of his mother, Jon's Azor Ahai vision. I can't remember whether I've uploaded that one yet or not, but I'm going through a series of the visions and dreams that we have in A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm also, the next one I'm going to be doing is one on Dany's dreams from Quaithe and what they mean and what's going on there. So how do they, as a whole, how do they play out? Well, this what matters with these is not the truth of the vision itself, although we shouldn't take visions and prophecies too seriously. A lot of the time they are reasonably trustworthy. Maggie the Frog, the Woods Witch, Ghost of High Heart, the stuff that Daenerys sees in the House of the Undying. The majority of this we can take reasonably seriously, but just not all of it. What George R. R. Martin is wanting us to look at is more who believes it. What do they do based on their belief? He's very human in his focus. He's not about focusing in on the magic and how amazing the magic is, the prophecies and the visions. He cares about the beliefs that are behind this. And if you just take Jaime with his vision of his mother, which, as I say, is one of the most underrated visions in terms of impact on the story, that changed fundamentally. That vision seems to have changed fundamentally his attitude towards his family and who he is as a person. So that is what George R. R. Martin is focused on. Diego Godoy saying, my question is about Ned Stark and how Stark's words, winter is coming. What do you think Ned thought those words meant? I ask because he didn't believe the rumours that the others were getting closer to the wall by the Night's Watch. What do you think his opinion would have been of the stories old Nan was telling Bran? Also, what storyline are you looking forward to the most in the Winds of Winter? I think the one I'm looking forward to the most, it changes every single time I look at something else, but I do keep on coming back to Slaver's Bay. What happens with Tyrion and Jorah and Barristan when they meet Daenerys? How does all of that work? There are so many POV characters all coming together at the same time. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. The first part, what did Ned Stark think winter is coming meant? Well, I suspect a large part of him just thought, these are my house words. This is just the truth of it. And on a very basic level, a very practical level, winter is coming is just about, you have to be ready. This isn't just an interesting or cool saying in the North. This is a matter of life and death, understanding that winter will come and people will die because winter is incredibly harsh. They didn't have central heating. Well, Winterfell effectively has central heating because of the hot springs and all the rest of it, but most of the North does not have anything approaching that, and people will die. You can't grow crops, you can't store things, you can't leave where you are for years, and that is incredibly harsh. So I think that is what Ned Stark's general view was. I think he did understand that there was a more historical perspective to this. Yes, he wasn't entirely bought into this idea of the others, but he also didn't dismiss it completely. So I think that he understood that there was some historical element here, but the Starks' remembrance of their role has been lost over time. That is, I think, undeniable. Tobias Hannon, thank you, saying huge fan, first time catching a live stream. Welcome. I love it when people hear first time. Thoughts on Jon being brought back by a fire funeral pyre via ghost, similarly to Dany birthing the dragons? Yeah, so I think that there will be some clear symbolism matches, is probably the best way to say it, across from Jon being brought back to Dany birthing the dragons. So she birthed the dragons as a funeral pyre with some death/sacrifices. So depending on which way you cut it, there was fire, there was intentionality, there was sacrifice of, she killed her husband, Drogo, she killed Mirri Maz Dur, that's another sacrifice, and also you could take their son, if you wish, Rhaego, or you could take the Khal Drogo's horse. There are a couple of different ways to do it, but there were sacrifices. Three dead for 3 dragons. Now, Jon returning, I don't know whether I'm theorizing it or just saying what I would like to happen. I think what I would like to happen is Jon returning. His body will be completely frozen. They will have to sort of get ice picks to get it out from the ice cells, I'm sure. I suspect that it will have to be thawed by fire, and he will therefore come out by ice and fire. And it would, I would love it to happen at the same time as the sacrifice of Shireen, which is already going to happen. It will happen, and if that sacrifice brings forth Jon, then that is a sacrifice bringing forth a dragon, because he is a Targaryen. So yes, that there will be some kind of like symbolic symmetry between those two things. Agnat86 saying Euron knows Mirri's magic. He might be able to undo it and make Dany fertile again. If he can promise this, will she accept his offer of marriage? So I think Euron is going to stay well away from Daenerys right until the end. He has sent Victarion there to try and bring her back. That's not going to work. And I think that he will change the subject of his intentions from Daenerys to Cersei. I think that is the overall aim there. In terms of him knowing Mirri Maz Dur's magic, being able to undo it and make Dany fertile again, I think that the hints were that in that very last Daenerys chapter of A Dance with Dragons, she eats some berries that make her slightly trippy, so we shouldn't necessarily take everything entirely factually, but she does seem to be bleeding again, and this does seem to imply that perhaps her moon cycle has returned in some way. Miri Mazda, we shouldn't take what she said as a curse, as a magic thing necessarily. She was being mean. She wasn't necessarily casting a spell on Dany. Now, so I think that yes, there probably wasn't. I mean, I'm slightly underplaying it. Yes, there probably was some magic at play there, but we shouldn't necessarily just take it as this is just a fact that Daenerys can now never ever have children again. The implications are that whatever happened, that has now ended. Reflective Rambling, thank you so much for the super chat, saying week 3 of overtime, you're a trooper. Thank you. Yeah, we are. Wow. Yes, we're going deep this time. Luna Rest, thank you so much for the question in the chat. That's a really good question, saying, have you heard of the theory of the snowmen at the top of the Winterfell battlements being a sign for Stannis or his followers to know which houses are part of the Grand Northern Conspiracy? Yes, I have heard of this theory. So there are snowmen atop the battlements of Winterfell who are very clearly snowmen made to look like specific characters. Are they a sign for Stannis? I don't think Stannis is yet a part of the Great Northern Conspiracy, but I think that they are there for those who need to know it. I think that they're a sign. So yes, I broadly agree with this idea. The Northern Conspiracy is a thing. There are many, the Mandleys are one of them. There are many other families in the north who are wanting to get the Starks back in and are trying to get the Boltons out. And I think that they are using snowmen to show who is on side and who is not on side. Stannis, however, is not yet completely in the loop on all of this, it has to be said. The second sister asks, Arya is a trained assassin and a skin changer with a pack of wolves. How will she use her skills in the Winds of Winter? I think that she will be assassinating people. And I think that in terms of the pack of wolves, I think that they are one of the groups who will be going through and we've already seen this in part, they are specifically focusing in on the enemies of the Starks. So they went after the Freys. So Nymeria, with Arya walking into her, is indeed going to be going and taking on the enemies of the Starks. That's not a specific thing that Arya is directing Nymeria to, but that is something that Nymeria is doing because of her spirit bond, her walking, skin-changing link. In terms of her being an assassin, she is going to kill people that she is told to by the Faceless Men, and people that she needs to kill in order to fulfill her prayer, her kill list, as it were. Lady Pushkins asks, how did Ned know to go to the Tower of Joy? Do you think Ashara Dane is alive? Sorry if you've covered this in your Tower of Joy videos. I've not watched them for a while. So how did he know? So the Tower of Joy is not as big a secret as we might think it is. The Tower of Joy was known by lots of people, that as in Rhaegar being there, it was known by lots of people. So this was known by at least 3 members of the Kingsguard. We don't hear about them, but they may have had squires and the like. Lyanna definitely will have had at least a maester or a lady in waiting there. So they will know what was going on. This was on the main pass. This was not hidden deep in the mountains somewhere. This was on the main pass between Dawn and the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. That means that House Fowler, who operate that pass, will have been aware. They were there for some time. They obviously will know if one of their watchtowers has been taken over by someone. The Martells almost certainly knew about this. The House Dane almost certainly would have been the people who are supplying this. So the Danes must have known about this. Lots of people knew about this. The thing was to keep the secret away from Robert Baratheon, not Ned Stark. They knew that Ned Stark was not going to kill Lyanna Stark. That wasn't an issue. They just had to keep the story, the truth away from Robert Baratheon. So how did he find out? Well, Howland Reed, who is connected to Ashara Dane, was part of Ned's group, and I suspect that was the route that they got the information to him. Do I think Ashara Dane is alive? Yes, I think that she is alive and in the neck. I have got, if you want to check out my Ashara Dane and Howland Reed theory video, it's not my original idea, but it's one that I'm 100% wedded to. I think it works perfectly. It sounds completely random when you first hear it, the idea that Ashara Dane and Howland Reed got together and are an item, but it makes so much sense when you actually get into the detail of it. So I think she is now Howland Reed's wife, going under the name of Gianna, which is obviously what you get as a compound word. Jon and Lyanna makes Gianna as a hint, and I think that she is hiding out there in the neck. Question from Jay Chef. Thank you so much. Saying, how will the Dark Star plot play out with Areo, Abara, and Sir Balon Swan, according to you? How do you think Dornish pieces play out in A Song of Ice and Fire? So I think that Dark Star will, high level again, I think he will claim Dawn. I think he will claim the title the Sword of the Morning, or he might claim for himself the Sword of the Evening. And I think that he will end up, once Dawn declares for Fagon, I think that he will end up in King's Landing and become a part of the King's Guard. I think that is Fagon will accept that this is a useful thing for him to have somebody who is an echo of Arthur Dane, albeit a dark echo of Arthur Dane, as part of his King's Guard. It will help legitimize him. So I think that's where he's going to end up. I think he will die, and the Sword of Dawn then comes into play, and I think that will be useful later on in the plot. In terms of the Dornish pieces more broadly, I think that Dawn, as I say, will end up supporting Fagon. I think that when Fagon falls, as I suspect that he will, then the rumblings from the Sand Snakes and others against Doran Martell will turn into an outright revolt, and they will then take over Dawn. So I think that is the sort of the broad strokes of what's going to be happening with Dawn through this. Brennan Barnes saying, I'd be interested to hear your take on what happens in King's Landing in the Winds of Winter. We have Kevin Lannister and Pycelle freshly dead, so they will need replacing. We have Cersei being manipulated by Taena Merryweather. We have scheming Tyrells. We have the upcoming trials of Cersei and Marjorie, Varys on the loose, lots of things going on. So how does this particular powder keg go off in your opinion? So broadly speaking, again, high level stuff. We leave it with Varys having framed the Tyrells for the death of Kevan Lannister. Cersei is safely in the Red Keep with a grudge against the Tyrells and a grudge against the High Sparrow. Jaime will not return to defend her, so she doesn't now know what to do. I am increasingly coming around to the idea that she will probably blow up the Great Sept in the same way that she did on the show, trying to kill two birds with one stone, get rid of the Tyrells, who were there because of Marjorie's trial, and also the High Sparrow and all of his acolytes. And I think that is what is going to happen. This will not endear Cersei to the people of King's Landing. They will be against her. Varys is going to be working behind the scenes to undermine Lannister rule. Mace Tyrell, perhaps before all this happens, will leave and head down to Storm's End. When he discovers what's happened, he will definitely not be supportive of Cersei anymore. If he ever was, he will probably turn his support to Fagon. The Lannister troops within King's Landing are very small. Most of them are up in the Riverlands. So when the Fagon arrives, the only possible answer for Cersei is for her to be escaping and for her to head off west out to her home, Casterly Rock. We've been promised by George R. R. Martin that we will see Casterly Rock, and I think through Cersei is the most logical way. So I think that's the iteration of events. Fagon will come in. He will get himself crowned as king of the Seven Kingdoms. He will demand everyone pay fealty to him, and he will start trying to gather together the accoutrements of kingship, which means that the sword Blackfire, I think, will mysteriously reappear. It's disappeared for so long. I think that Illyrio Mopatis will bring that with him. I think that he will build his Kingsguard, who will be starting to reflect the previous Targaryen Kingsguards. I think that he will sit upon the Iron Throne. I think that he will do all of the things you would expect from a king. I think that he'll be good to the small folk. He will probably turn out, actually, in the short term, he is king, to be quite a good king. And then Daenerys will arrive and she will show that he is not a true Targaryen. So that is how I see that all of this is going to be playing out in King's Landing. Steve C saying, do you think the Dornish will leave the Seven Kingdoms to return to the Rhoynar? Dorne is said to be dying. I don't think so in this book. Dorne... there are lots of different... It's one of the most ethnically diverse parts of the Seven Kingdoms, actually, Dorne. So the salty Dornish are the ones who are descended from the Rhoynar. There are plenty of others who aren't. Obviously, we get some anomalies like House Dane, but we also get this stony Dornish who were there well before. They're sort of probably descended from the First Men. Would they go back to the River Rhoyne maybe after the end of all of this, but not as a part of this story? I don't think. I think that they're embedded there and have put down their roots. Donald People says or asks, will we see Benjen again, and how might he re-enter the story? Yeah, I think we probably will see Benjen again north of the Wall, and the question is who north of the Wall might we encounter him through. Probably Bran is the only way that we're going to do that. In the show, his character was merged with Cold Hands. But I think that we will see that he's survived somehow. Perhaps he will have been sort of revived in a way that means that he can't come back south of the wall. So I think he will, but exactly how, I mean, he's not going to play as big a role as he did on the show. He's not going to be protecting Jon in the way that he did on the show. That whole episode was completely made up by the showrunner, so that's not going to happen. The way that he probably will come in is protecting Bran on the way back down south. Bride of Fire says, what do you think of the controversial Sansa chapter that George R. R. Martin mentioned will happen? Sorry if you already covered this in your Sansa, the Winds of Winter stream. I didn't actually. I don't think anyone asked about it. There was many years ago, Illyrio, who is one of the collaborators with George R. R. Martin, one of the Illyrio and Linda of great fame, who co-wrote the World of Ice and Fire with him. He said in an interview 8-9 years ago, maybe, that he had seen a Sansa chapter which was controversial. Now, we don't know why exactly it was controversial. He didn't go into any details on that, but I think the hint is that this is going to be echoing in some way what Sansa went through with Ramsay. Now, it's not going to be quite as extreme as that, I suspect, but we probably will see some non-consensual stuff going on, and Sansa probably will grow through the experience. Now, that is, I know, suitably vague because we haven't got huge amounts of information about it. But Harry the Heir, for those who are unaware, in the books, Littlefinger is now setting Sansa up with this character called Harry the Heir, who is the heir to the Vale of Arryn. So the idea being that if she marries him, then she will be married into becoming the heir there as well. And he seems to be quite an entitled person, let's put it that way, to the extent that he makes her feel, reflect back on the previous men that she's known or been, I was going to say romantically involved with, that's probably the wrong word, but people like Tyrion and Joffrey, and makes her realize that, you know, Tyrion wasn't all that bad and Joffrey really was. So where does Harry the Heir fit in with this? Probably not as bad as Ramsay, but probably also not a good influence in Sansa's life. Milton Duffy says, what will happen with Loras if all his family dies? So Loras Tyrell is currently on Dragonstone, so I think that if all his family won't die is the short answer. There are many Tyrells, but clearly lots of the people he cares about will die. I think that this is just going to make him more anti-Lannister. He already pretty much was. And Ryan Viao saying, love your voice, dude. You should announce golf. Thank you. I've never considered announcing golf, but thank you very much. Julia Erickson saying, hello, Robert. Tormund is, among many other things, called Hornblower. Do you think this could foreshadow Tormund blowing the Horn of Winter? Since Joramun blew it last time, it would be a nice repetition of history. I think Jon will blow the Horn of Winter. Personally, I think that the person who blows the Horn of Winter should be one of several things. I think that he should potentially be Stark, the leader of House Stark at the time, the person who blows the horn of winter, perhaps potentially should be the prince that was promised / Azor Ahai. That might make some kind of thematic sense. The leader of the wildlings, that might make some kind of thematic sense. Maybe the Knight Commander of the Night's Watch. Jon could be all of those things at the same time. So I think Jon will. In terms of Tormund blowing a horn, I do wonder whether he is going to be the person on the wall who spots, and they sort of did this a little bit on the show, and I do believe that a lot of the time stuff that happens on the show, we should not necessarily take it exactly how it's going to happen, but maybe there are hints there. Tormund was there when the others were seen from the wall, and we know what happens when the others are seen. There are 3 blows of the horn. Perhaps Tormund will be the person to blow the horn 3 times to say the others are here in this very last chapter of the Winds of Winter. It makes sense to me. Maura Lee says, George R. Martin says that we will see Howland Reed in the books again. Do you think we'll have to wait till a Dream of Spring before this happens? Besides Howland giving us the truth about Jon's heritage, what other wisdom or insights do you think that he will shed light on? Yeah, so he will definitely reappear. This much we know. Will he reappear in the Winds of Winter? I would like him to. It's possible that he won't until A Dream of Spring. Perhaps he will appear at the end of the Winds of Winter, and that is when Jon is going to start learning of his heritage. But it makes slightly more sense narratively, I think, that he does everything that he does and only later learns about his heritage. So Howland probably will arrive a little bit later. Londuck 20. Hi, Robert. George R. R. Martin has said he will open the Winds of Winter with the 2 major battles. So who do you think the first major character to be killed off with? So yes, he will. So the 2 major battles are what fandom have often called the Battle of Ice and the Battle of Fire. The Battle of Ice being Stannis' attack on Winterfell. The Battle of Fire being this huge battle around Meereen. So yes, he's going to be. We're going to open with both of those. Who does this mean? The first major character is who's going to die. Victarion may, but I have a feeling that he will probably survive until Daenerys arrives back. Stannis is the unpopular answer. Either Stannis or Roose has to, or Ramsay has to die in that battle. One of them. And Stannis is definitely not an endgame character, so it's entirely possible it's going to be him. I'm afraid. We're going to have Shireen halfway through without a shadow of doubt. Victarion will die at some point. I suspect that Aeron Greyjoy will also die at some point, probably not immediately, so that he stays on so that we can see what Euron's doing, but quite early on too. And secondly, you were talking about what happens to Sir Hyle Hunt. It seems that no one in the A Song of Ice and Fire community cares what happens to him. Hyle Hunt, for those who don't know, he's a fascinating character. He started out being somebody who was effectively mocking Brienne, and he was one of the people who was sort of like involved in a wager to see who could sleep with her, in a kind of mocking way. But he seems to have come round to her. He seems to now be following her around. That's what he's been doing for the last few chapters. Half a mind on because he thinks that there's a reward if they ever do find Sansa, and half a mind because actually he kind of likes Brienne. Now, he was also, along with Brienne and Pod, he was strung up by Lady Stoneheart until Brienne sort of shouted something and ended all of that. So what's going to happen with him? I think he will probably be freed along with Brienne and Pod. His main role, though, I think, is foreshadowing of Jaime. I think that is where he's at. As I say, he's a fascinating character because he sort of seems, we don't ever see from his point of view, obviously, but he seems to come round to an understanding that she is more than just this figure of fun. She's actually quite an impressive figure in and of herself. And this seems to be foreshadowing of where Jaime's going to go to. So that seems to be his main role thematically. Ken Guillermo, thank you so much for the super chat. Didn't see a question with that, but thank you. Lexi8971, thank you very much, saying, just found your channel, became a patron. I've learned so much. Thank you. Welcome. It's great to have you on board. Thank you so much. Question from Second Sister. Who do you think will be in the team which will fight the final battle against Euron and Cersei? I think this will be the Cripples, Bastards and Broken Things. I think it will be the same sorts of characters we saw going down to King's Landing on the show. People like, I think Arya will head down to King's Landing. I think Jaime will head down to King's Landing. I think the Hound will. Sam, not involved in the fighting, but he is also one of that group as well. And Jaime too is, Jon too. So those are the characters who are going to be heading on down at the end. It's the Cripples, Bastards and Broken Things is who we should be looking for. Second Sister also asks, considering Bran may have been taken over by the last Greenseer, do you think he will have a POV chapter in the Winds of Winter? I think so if we're going to see what happens north of the Wall with Bran, we have to have a Bran POV chapter. Now, we know that we're going to see Hodor, the Hodor moment at some point, and that surely, therefore, has to be through Bran. As fun as it would be to have a Hodor POV chapter, which incidentally George R. R. Martin did release once as an April Fool's joke. It just said Hodor, 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 Hodor. You get the idea. But we will see. So I think that by implication, we will see at least one Bran chapter. My guess is that we will see 3 or 4 Bran chapters. As I said, I've been trying to work my way through this about how many chapters we're going to have. Not many is a shorter answer, because I think that the more Bran knows and understands, the more sparing George R. R. Martin has to be with him. But we have to, I think, have at least one more chapter where he understands or gets to learn about what's going on with the others. We've been told that we will travel further north in this book than in any other book so far. That's not going to be with any of the actual characters traveling very far north, further than the Fist of the First Men. The only character who can do that is through some sort of astral projection. That has to be Bran. So I'm pretty sure we'll have at least one chapter where that happens. One chapter where the Hodor moment happens in some way. The attack, I don't think it'll be exactly the same, but the attack on Bloodraven's cave, whatever it is that forces Bran back down south again. I suspect we will probably have another chapter of him making his way south, so not just doing the escape, but making his way and encountering Benjen or Cold Hands or whoever it is, and then maybe one more when he arrives at Winterfell. But I think that, so we're not going to have huge amounts of chapters from his perspective, but we will have some. And when he gets back to Winterfell, suddenly he's going to be surrounded by all these other characters who we see things from, and I think that's the point at which we don't need his point of view anymore. because it would give too much away because he could learn so much, and B, his point of view is useful has been useful because it's been showing us what's happening to him, and nobody else could show us that. There are no other POV characters there, so we will have more POV characters from POV chapters from him, but not that many. Question from Ken Grimo. Thank you so much. Saying, hey Robert, do you think Oathkeeper could play a part in Jon finding out about his true parentage? Ned's sword helping him keep his oath. Yes. So also, sorry. Thank you, Susan Knuckle, saying that Stephen Dillon has a super chat. I will try and find that. Will Oathkeeper help? No, I think is the short answer. No. So I think that the names of Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail, yes, they do thematically play back to what happened with Ned and the Tower of Joy and Lyanna and all the rest of it. But I don't think that they're enough of a clue for Jon to understand what's going on with his parentage. So he will learn that, I suspect, from Howland Reed when Howland Reed arrives back. I mean, the other two possible people who could tell him are Bran, coming from north of the Wall, or Sam, coming all the way from the south, if he gets any more information. But no, I don't think that this is simply the names of swords is not going to be enough to tell Jon what his parentage is. Stephen Dillon, thank you for the super chat, saying, what name do you think R&L wanted Jon to have? Well, different names. So Rhaegar, and this was something that seemed to be quite a big issue in the Game of Thrones community quite a while ago. When Jon was named on the show, he was named Aegon, and people were up in arms. Why on earth would he be named Aegon? There already was a baby. Rhaegar already had a baby called Aegon. Why on earth would he name another child Aegon? The short answer is that Rhaegar did not name Jon. Rhaegar was absolutely convinced, as far as we can tell, that he was going to have a daughter. He had been naming his children after the original three Targaryen invaders of Westeros, and he'd already got Aegon, and he got Rhaenys, and the next one would be Visenya. So I think he was convinced. Rhaegar is wrong a lot. Let's not forget this. He was a good character and all the rest of it, but he was wrong a lot about prophecy, and he thought he was going to have a daughter who he could name Visenya. So I think that when he left the Tower of Joy well before the baby was born. I think he left saying, this is going to be a daughter and her name will be Visenya. Then he's gone off. The baby is born, and some point around that time, Lyanna discovers that Rhaegar is dead, and his children are dead, and the baby is born, and it's not a girl. If it were a girl, then I have no doubt that she would have named it as Rhaegar had wanted, Visenya. I think that that's fine. But a boy was born, and she thought, well, how do I honor Rhaegar and what he was wanting? And what he was wanting was to have an heir called Aegon, who was going to be the heir to the throne. So I think that Lyanna named the child Aegon. I think for me that makes sense. I would personally, I like the idea of Jon being like Jaehaerys, the conciliator, and all the rest of it. But I think narratively it makes sense that if you're going to name a child, you would name it after, if not Rhaegar himself, then one of the innocent killed children. That's how it is. Rhaegar did not name Jon. Lyanna did. Question, Eric Fogg, any possibility that Howland moved to the Tower of Joy to Greywater Watch? No, I don't think so. Yes, Howland can move castles, but I think that's talking just about Greywater Watch itself, which can move around with the tides. I don't think he did that. I think, and added to which, Ned remembers tearing down the tower brick by brick. That's not in A Fever Dream. George R. R. Martin says we shouldn't take everything that happened in the Fever Dream entirely right, but when you, as entirely accurate, which fair enough, but when you actually look at it, some of it is a fever dream and some of it is Ned remembering stuff. And one of the things Ned remembers specifically is tearing the tower down brick by brick, which is odd, but he definitely did it. Susan Dunkel saying, cheers to 3+ hours. What? I'm still going. Excellent job, Robert. Thank you. There have been a lot of questions on this one. I've got half a dozen or more to go through, but we can do this. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. The Stock and Winterfell says, what do you think Alleras or Sarella is up to in the Citadel? Do you think she will have a role to play in Sam's story or the attack on Old Town? So this is one of the Sand Snakes is called Sarella, one of the people that Sam meets, and she is away from Dawn, we are told. One of the people that Sam meets, who sounds physically, as description wise, sounds quite like a sand snake, is called Alleras, who is in the Citadel. We know that her father, Oberyn Martell, went to the Citadel, so it would certainly seem in character. Almost certainly these are the same person. Do you think that she will have a role to play in Sam's story? Yes. But I think primarily she went to the Citadel not for any nefarious plot point, but just to learn stuff because she wanted to learn. And we're told that she's very clever and she has been earning her links and all the rest of it. She is, however, mixed up with Marwyn the Mage and that whole gang there. So we will definitely see her being not 100% on the side of the Grey Mice, as they get derogatorily called, but the Maesters. So that is what it. But I don't think she's there with an ulterior motive. But we will see her working there on behalf of Marwyn as well as in order to be gaining knowledge in and of herself. Susan Dunkel, thank you. Your super chat, and I've now got your question from Patreon saying, hi Robert, I've been rereading the Theon chapters. I feel that in the Winds of Winter he's being coaxed into reclaiming his identity by the gods via Weirwood Net and Ravens. I get why they want him in front of the Weirwood at Stannis's camp. I can envision a murder of crows in the branches calling out mercy or wall in order to save Theon from Stannis, but can't figure out how Asha is involved in these plans. So yes, I think that he will be taken to the Weirwood Tree. I think that at that point there will be an intervention from Ravens, from the Weirwood Tree speaking, from Bloodraven or Bran or whoever speaking through the Weirwood Tree, something which will convince the Northern Lords that Theon should be set free. I think that seems to be the most logical thing there. I think so. Asha was the one who suggested that that's where he goes. I think that she did not come up on this idea on her own, but it was clearly an attempt to save Theon, and clearly this is an attempt to prevent Stannis from just killing him outright there and then by hanging him or whatever. So that's what Asha's role is. She is there as a sort of effectively she's a prisoner under house arrest. She can go around the camp, but she is effectively a prisoner of Stannis. And what she is trying to do now is to save Theon. So that is what's going on there. And when you asked whether this is foreshadowing how Theon will redeem himself with shooting an arrow, perhaps, yes, possibly. I think that he will sacrifice himself for House Stark. It won't be in exactly the same way as it was on the show, but I think that is where it is. Eric Fogg says, why does Roose tolerate Ramsay, particularly Ramsay's likely murder of Roose's past and future trueborn heirs? Well, I think Roose respects strength. I think the fact that he does not have a trueborn heir is why he tolerates Ramsay. This was never, for those who don't know, so Roose did have a trueborn son who then mysteriously died while he was going in to talk to Ramsay. Now, Roose isn't a fool. I suspect that he probably suspects it was Ramsay, but at the same time, he can't prove it. So why is he tolerating him? Because he needs an heir. That I think it's as simple as that. And he sees Ramsay's faults, but he wants his name to carry on. I think it's as basic and simple as that. Second Sister says, Sansa is kind of getting a second chance at owning a guy like Joffrey. She has seen two queens trying to claim Joffrey at King's Landing, Cersei and Marjorie. How do you think we will see this in the way she plays Harry the Heir? I think that she will recognize Harry the Heir for what he is, and I think that she will, whereas with Joffrey, she was at the mercy of the people who pushed her together with Joffrey and then said, no, not there, you go to Tyrion. She was being played and pushed around. I think here she will realize that she doesn't have an opportunity to resist being pushed together with him, but once she's there, she will be able to play Harry the Heir completely. So I think that this is what we're going to see in the Eyrie is Sansa coming into her own as a political player, and she has been learning. Let's not forget, she has been learning from people who are good at this game, not necessarily good people, but she has been seeing how Cersei, how Littlefinger, how Joffrey, how Tyrion have been playing the Game of Thrones, and she has been learning from that. So that's where I see this one going. I think that she will probably eventually end up killing Harry the Heir. Maybe not herself, but perhaps seeing to his end. Stephen Dillon, this is my penultimate question from my patrons. So, guys, if you've got any more questions in the chat, now is a good time to drop them in. Stephen Dillon says, "Hi, I've seen many people say that the end of the story for Jon will be similar to the show where he goes north. Do you think this will be the same? Also, do you think he will be heading north with Val? I've seen that argument a lot. Also, do you think there's anyone out there other than Howland Reed who knows about R plus L equals J? I think so. I think that the House Dane knows about it. The main people of House Dane at the time, anyway, which means that Shara Dane does. I think that Bran will find out when he needs to find out. In terms of Jon's end, yeah, it kind of makes sense to me, and it makes sense to me in the way that when George R. R. Martin talks about the end of A Song of Ice and Fire, he says bittersweet, yes, but what does bittersweet mean? And then he talks about the scouring of the Shire, and he talks about the end of The Lord of the Rings, and he references Frodo in particular, about how Frodo carried the burden and was broken by it, and he could not ever enjoy the fruits of what he did. He couldn't enjoy the new world that he helped to save, to the extent that he had to leave it. He had to head off west. And Jon, my pithy take on Jon in relation to the Lord of the Rings is that he has been written to be like Aragorn. So we're supposed to think that he's Aragorn, but actually he's more like Frodo. He is carrying this burden. Jon is a person who carries a burden. He has been all the way through. He's so earnest, and he's been carrying this burden of saving the Seven Kingdoms that he doesn't even know about yet, but that's there. And at the end of it all, he is going to be a broken person. And what will he be able to relax and enjoy things, particularly if he ends up killing, again, effectively killing the person he loves, Daenerys? Is he going to be able to relax and just put his feet up and enjoy the new world? No, I don't think he is. I think that he will need to leave the Seven Kingdoms, and it makes a lot of thematic sense for me if he goes north of the wall and just like starts a new life up there. That seems to work really well for me. Catherine Furseth saying, "Hi Robert, this is my last question for my patrons. Hi Robert, thanks for doing live streams in the middle of summer. If you have time, where plot-wise do you see the main storylines being at the end of the Winds of Winter?" So at the end of the Winds of Winter, I think at a high level, the others have come down to the wall. I suspect perhaps that even the last scene we have is the others breaching the wall and heading into the Seven Kingdoms. Daenerys, with her invasion fleet, will arrive and claim King's Landing, and I suspect that we're going to have ice and fire finally reaching Westeros. In terms of the other plot lines, the Starks will all come back into Winterfell, so the threat from the Boltons and all the rest of it will have been dealt with. I think that Fagon will be established in King's Landing with the support of Dawn, possibly the Tyrells, definitely the Golden Company. Cersei will have escaped over to Casterly Rock. I think that she will have forged, this might not happen until the next book, but who knows, forged an alliance with Euron, who has been doing crazy things off the south coast and will burn Old Town before joining forces with Cersei. So that is how I think it's going to end. But basically, it's going to be set up for the last book by the arrival of ice and fire at opposite ends of Westeros. Let me have a final check through the chat. See if there's any quick questions to answer. Can't see anything immediate. Okay, so Andrew K saying, Indie Geek, do you think that the Mercy chapter, Arya's methods of stealth, guile, misdirection, and trickery will be more of what we see going forward instead of the show super soldier ninja assassin? Yeah, so she's been taught how to kill as a faceless man kills, which is through stealth. And that is what she has been learning. She's not just going to be somebody who turns up and is great at fighting everybody all the time. Yes, she will be good at fighting. She's been taught how to fight, but that's not what her main skill set is going to be going forward. Okay, so I think I'm going to start bringing this one to a close now. Thank you so much. Some fantastic questions all the way through that. If you are watching this and wanting some more of these live streams, then there will be a link appearing somewhere up here to a playlist. If you are interested in supporting this channel, getting access to some of the things I do exclusively for my patrons, there will be a link appearing somewhere around here. Okay, that's all for this week. I will be back same time next week. Take care, everyone, and I will see you again soon.